Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
Are you spending a lot of time looking for setups and struggling for faster lap times? Are you tired of searching online for answers? Would you like to get setups, analysis and tutorials from some of the best sim racers in the world like Ralph Alla, Mitchell de Jong, Martin Krunker, Josh Rogers and many more? If so, virtualracingschool.com is the answer you've been looking for. VRS data packs provide hot laps from our professional coaches for you to analyse and replicate. They provide tutorials that walk you through the fastest laps and what the pros did to achieve the best times. And they provide the setups you need to ensure your car is competitive in both oval and road racing. If you're ready to get faster and reach more podiums sooner than later, just go to virtualracingschool.com and sign up for a free account today.
A very good evening and welcome to Evolution Sim Racing European GT Championship Round 1 from the Sachsenring in Germany. I'm James Bostock. I'm in the commentary booth tonight with Dara Thacker to bring you all the action from this first round. Can you hear me, Dara, and are you there?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one, James. It's going to be a really exciting race. Great way to kick off the season as well. It's a tight and tricky circuit, but I think one that the drivers will enjoy racing in these GT3 and GT4 machines.
It's going to be absolutely epic, and it's our first round. We did attempt a little bit of a pre-season last week, but we've got a lot of people that couldn't make it, and we also had some technical difficulties in the comms booth as well. So apologies to those who were expecting a broadcast last week, but we're here for round 1, and that's the most important thing. So just to get things underway, I can see that we've got a few people joining us in the chat, so great to have you with us. And if Rob can let us know if the audio is working out correct for myself and Dara, we can adjust the volumes as we go through, no problem. What are your thoughts for tonight's race, Dara, and the championship ahead?
It's a really exciting looking calendar, of course, isn't it? Fortnightly on a Sunday night really adds a little bit of importance to some of these races, and 10 fantastic circuits to go racing at as well, going right the way across Europe, aren't we, to the Iberian Peninsula, to the Mediterranean parts, and to Northern Europe as well, to Germany, to Britain by the end of the season. It's going to be a really exciting calendar, and with races that are a little bit longer than what we're generally used to here at ESR. I think it's going to be a real challenge for some of these drivers, but with the team's championship on the line, something that I think they can rise to.
It certainly is, and I've just had a comment in the chat from Glass Tech Racing, so probably Joe Glass just checking in to see that we have turned up. But yeah, so one of the reasons that unfortunately you guys have got me in the comms booth this season instead of Joe working the cameras is that we felt that it was about time that Joe was let loose and get back on track. So Joe's actually in this tonight. He's teaming up with William Humphrey, so the super flying GT4 driver. So that's going to be really, really, really interesting to see how those two get on. But we'll come to that in a minute. Before we start, let's have a quick look at the calendar for the season. So here we are tonight in round 1 at the Sachsenring in Germany. Round 2 is in 2 weeks' time at the Hungaroring for another 60-minute race. Round 3 moves us on to the Red Bull Ring, so we've got 3 rings in the first 3 rounds. All 60-minute races in Austria, round 3. And then Zandvoort to the Netherlands, which is going to be the first race of our 90-minute round. So slight change for the 90-minute rounds, which we'll tell you a little bit about in a moment. After Zandvoort, we then move round 5 to Imola in Italy for another 60-minute round. And then round 6 is Le Mans, the famous Le Mans, the track where Rob Mackay is the fastest driver in all classes, pretty much. And I know he's in the chat now, and he'll enjoy that shout out. So yeah, we've got a 90-minute at Le Mans, and Le Mans is a sunset race. So we're going to be doing quite a bit of jumping on board with the drivers as it gets dark in Le Mans. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. Round 7 over to Spain in Catalonia for the next 60-minute race, followed by round 8 in Portimao, the Algarve circuit, for the final 90-minute race of the season, followed up by the penultimate round, which is round 9 in Belgium, Spa-Francorchamps, and the final round will be on the 27th of July, round 10 in Silverstone, for the last of the 60-minute races. Whew, it's going to be a good season, Dara, isn't it?
I mean, taking us to the end of July as well, isn't it? I mean, it really is going to be feel like one of the longest seasons, if not the longest season that we've had in ESR. But it's going to keep the drivers interested for the next few months on their Sunday nights and give them something to race for every couple of weeks. But the Sachsenring, a really interesting circuit to get us started on, isn't it?
It is. It is a very, very interesting circuit. We have made a small change to the weather. So when we launched the series, we were hoping for midday races. But we did get some feedback from some of the drivers that were doing the testing, and they felt that it was just a little bit too, the track temperatures were a little bit too warm. So we've reduced it to partly cloudy, and also the starting time was 9 AM in sim. So we're looking at probably about 11 o'clock in sim kick-off time. But yeah, this I did a little bit of practicing with John Ludbrook yesterday. Just followed him round for a few laps, and my goodness, this is a very, very short, tight track. You come down into that tight turn 1, and then from turn 1 all the way up through to turn 6, it's a twisty, windy little in and out section. Power down in turn 7, and then you've got the fast left-handers of 8, 9 and 10 bringing you all the way up to the top of the hill, and then down the hill into turn 12. I think turn 12 you could definitely get caught out in turn 12 with late braking and getting out onto that gravel, and then coming up to the final turn 13 uphill. And what I was finding yesterday is that just a slight bit too much acceleration and that back end's going to spin out. So going to be really, really interesting. But you don't need to take my word for it, actually, Dara, because what people don't realise is that Rob Mackay very, very kindly, when he finished the Sebring 12 yesterday, actually took a flight to Germany and did an onboard lap for us. So he's borrowed the car of Danny Weir, because I think Rob's car was actually a bit wrecked after the 12-hour. So yeah, if you want to talk us through it, Dara, this is Rob Mackay taking us around Sachsenring.
Yeah, it's a really interesting circuit around here. Tricky to absolutely nail every single corner. You can see turn 1 very, very tight on the inside line, and the circuit does drop away from you as you run through the opening turn. Turn 2 opens up just a little bit, but all of a sudden you have to be right on the brakes once again into this tricky right-hander that just keeps going and going and going and going and going. We're still going with Rob as he gets his way in towards turn 4, and from here on out, really, with the exception of a slight kink, you're going to be turning left. The front right tyre is going to be screaming at you. Turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, now into turn 7, with ever increasing loads onto that tyre as the speed increases, and the downforce just about gives you enough to run your way through. In towards turn number 8 we go. A little bit more of a flick, as it will be through turn 9 and then 10 as well, but we're still coming left, James. It just doesn't stop. There's a little flick as you get in towards turn 11, the track dropping away once again, but then it is as wide as it ever will be here at the Sachsenring as you work your way in towards turn number 12. The left-hander, a good overtaking opportunity before you run up towards the final corner, where the camber can create a nice passing place, maybe a set up the inside, the gravity naturally slowing the cars down, but going for a bit of a send and then rise over to the top of the crest of the hill. And that's to finish a lap as well. I'd be screaming, to be honest, if I was next to Rob doing that lap, but he's done pretty well there, hasn't he?
He has. I just hope that he's returned Danny's car in one piece after that lap. That was only the lap that we recorded, so God knows what happened afterwards when he got let loose with no camera on. But anyway, so moving on, race format and rules. So European GT Championship, something very, very different for ESR. So we're running a multi-class series. So we've got GT3 and GT4. So a little bit about the format. So we've got a 4 laps lone qualifying, or 20 minutes. Some drivers will probably go out early, some drivers will probably go out late. Then we've got a 1-hour race, and the fuel limit tonight is 70% for all cars. So they are going to have to make at least 1 pit stop tonight. They do get 1 fast repair. Everything's the same for the 90-minute rounds, apart from the fuel is reduced to 60%. So when we come to those 90-minute rounds, you will probably see some cars actually doing 2 pit stops for the longer race rounds. But we don't need to worry about that tonight. So we've got GT3 cars and GT4. Each team, so it's teams of 2. So a team must have entered 1 driver in the GT3 and 1 driver in the GT4 class to make up a team. Each team was allowed 1 reserve driver, and you will see some reserve drivers tonight. They've got an R at the end of their name, so the reserve drivers can reserve up to twice per season maximum for either the GT3 or the GT4 driver for the Teams Championship. Of course, damage is on, as with all ESR races, and we have open setups for this series. And just so you're aware, 17x would give a drive-through penalty, and 22x for incident points would give a race disqualification. So the drivers have got to be a little bit careful in terms of those off tracks, in terms of keeping out of trouble, incidents in those longer races. And rolling starts, which are separated by class. Okay, so we'll have the GT4 drivers just starting at between 5 to 10 car lengths back from the GT3 drivers. So in terms of championship, we've got 4 different championships running all at the same time throughout this series. So we've got the GT3 championship, which consists of 30 GT3 drivers. We've got the GT4 championship, which consists of 30 GT4 drivers. Reserve drivers don't count in the Drivers' Championship in that GT3 and GT4. As we've said, each team is made up of 1 of each, and then the combined iRating of those 2 drivers has allowed us to separate those teams into 2 classes. So we've got the pro teams, and the way that the split fell is that we've arrived at this kind of more or less 4,400 iRating. So the pro teams will be all teams with a greater iRating than 4,400, and the Pro-Am teams will be all the teams that have got an iRating less than 4,400. So let's have a look at the drivers. Dara, do you want to take us through the GT3 driver lineup, please?
Well, I will, it's certainly so. We've only got the one driver over the 4,000 iRating threshold, but it doesn't really matter. We've got a really good competition in both the GT3s and the GT4s, and you can really see it from the top. Anton Kello is that top driver coming into the championship. He'll be driving EMK SimSport outfit. We'll get into the teams in a little bit, but we've got the likes of Zilinskas, Frederico Luzzi, Denzel Clarkson as well in this. Jason Baxter, I have to apologise, in the Rage Against the Game Esports Ruby car. Interesting to see how he is able to go. Flatline are back. They've got a couple of cars in the championship, and their green GT3 entrant is going to be Jaden Scott. And Lumen Motorsport as well have a fair few drivers. You can see their names popping up a fair few times. Alok Iyengar will be in there for the Flux team. Will Soper, James Warren, Christian Chard in there as well with Gianni Terha and Bruno Silva, Dave Van Dam, Ben Benuer for Quartermass, another team with a couple of cars in the championship, and Matt Hoyland for Dexterous Motorsports, a team that has been well known in ESR for quite some time now. Ryan Blackie, Jeffrey Damon, Robin Earl Brown in that Came GP2, a team that we've seen more than a fair few times. Matthew Jones, Clyde Veyer, Robin Aston in this class as well with Joe Sparrow, and probably the worst driver on the grid, Joe Glass there in that Glass Tech Racing entry. Andrew Fellows, Dean Sheesby, Adam Baker, Lewis Plath, Andre Montian, Andy Chell and Dean Sargent in here as well. Loads of these guys getting involved in lots of different competitions, and they're going to be balancing this with I think the Motorsports UK GT Challenge that's on at the moment, James.
Yes, I've seen some of them are already kind of getting that multi-class experience in there. Just to touch on a couple of drivers that kind of stand out for us. So you've mentioned Joe Glass. Don't let the iRating fool you of 1,768. So Joe doesn't do many officials, but he's definitely up there with the likes of Matt Hoyland, Gianni Terha. It's going to be really interesting to see how Rumas Zelinskas fares. Rumas was with us, I think, in our first or second season at ESR. Really, really quick driver, and from looking at the timing tower in the practice, Denzel Clarkson is absolutely flying as well around this circuit. So this is going to be really, really interesting battle. So let's just look at some of the GT4 drivers. So GT4 Drivers' Championship, we've got Sergio Ferreira, who is coming in as the highest iRating driver from Lumen Motorsport, followed by William Humphrey. Everybody who's watched ESR in GT4 will know that William Humphrey is absolutely like lightning. So it's going to be fantastic to see how Sergio and William can go head-to-head in this GT4 battle, but it's not going to be just as simple as a head-to-head because it's multi-class and it's a 1 hour race. So they are going to have to navigate cars, GT3 cars that are coming to overtake them. So we've got Pedro Luis da Silva for Naviex Racing, followed by Marius Hibmer. We've all seen Marius in the GT4 Championship, another really, really quick driver. And I think Marius has taken the McLaren, so that'll be interesting to see how Marius goes. Sean Moriarty for Lumen Motorsports Flux. We've got Mike Fowler for Quad Dash Racing, partnering up with Denzel Clarkson. We've got Bobby Moss in Lumen Motorsport Pulse. We've got Tristan Engelstadt. Again, Tristan's a previous ESR competitor, so Tristan is known for his pace, 3,000 iRating. So Tristan's going to be up there. We've got Linus Vicious. I knew I was going to get that. I knew that was going to be tricky, but we'll have to work on that as we go through. We might have to just call him Linus for now. We've got Jeremy Orlemans, who's unfortunately had to withdraw from Flatline Racing. So Andrew Fellows as teammate, he is looking for an alternative teammate from round 2 for round 2 onwards. We've got Dan Cross in the Mission R powered by Mords. Chris Jennings, another driver, Axis Conehead, another driver that's been really, really quick in previous leagues in ESR. So going to be interesting to see how he goes. We've got Craig Hewlett from HSR Motorsport. Craig's made the jump across from, I think, ACC over to iRacing. Very, very quick driver, so it's going to be really interesting to see how Craig gets on. And then we've got Evan Main, first of the Rage Against the Machine teams, Rage Against the Game esports Ruby team, followed by Stephen Donnelly. Stephen Donnelly, another driver in the recent GT4 seasons that was running right up there with William Humphrey. So this is going to be electric. We've then got Scott Kostrick, Suma GP2, teaming up with Robin Aston. We've got Nils Cooler. We've all seen Nils Cooler battling with Robin Noel Brown in the GT4s last season. We've got Malcolm Coates, Rage Against the Game Esports Diamond. I got it right this time. Jason Haddington, Flatline Racing Blue, part of the Flatline camp. We've got Matthew Noel making his return to ESR for Lumen Motorsports Glow. And then we've got Nick Stubb, so Vulcan Fasteners by Glasstech Racing, fielding Nick Stubb and Matthew Jones, so we know how quick Nick Stubb can be. We've got Name Mayer from the Random Racers, Pete Paver from LS Racing. We've got Yella H. Damstra from MK Simsport, followed by Martin Kenyon. We know that Martin's quicker than a 1592 iRating, that's for sure. So it's going to be interesting to see how Martin goes. We've got Simon Hunt from Quarterpass Motorsport, and then John Ludbrook, Kamei GP2, teaming up with Robin Noel Brown, who can't be here this evening because he's stuck up a mountain somewhere. We've got Rob Gregg from Moonshiners Racing Club, who's teaming up with Dean Sheesby in the GT3s. And then we've got Callum Morrow from LS Racing and Ian Chambers rounding out the GT4 grid from Quartermass Motorsports Bravo. So that's all the Drivers' Championships. But then this is how they team up in the different Teams Championship. And the Teams Championship is where all the action is going to take place, because this is where the big prizes are on offer. What I think is really interesting here, Dara, is there's going to be some teams that the pairings are going to be so interesting to see how that evolves throughout the season. You know, if you take Glasstech Racing, for example, we've got Joe Glass, who should be running top 5 in the GT3s, maybe top 10. We've then got William, who should be winning or keeping up, you know, podiums at least in all of the GT4 races. But then you've got Aruma Zelinskas and Linus with a combined I rating of almost 7,000. Jaden Scotton and Marius Hibner. You know, is it going to favour a team that's got a strong driver in one class and a weaker driver in another, or is it going to favour a team that's maybe got like a 3rd or 4th place driver in both classes? What are your thoughts on how that's going to play out?
I think it's going to be interesting, really, because there are a couple of those teams, you touched upon them, that have 2 drivers that we'd expect to be fighting right at the front every single race over the course of this season, and other teams that have some very solid drivers, but not necessarily drivers we'd immediately pick out for race wins, and they'll be looking for top 10s in their own classes. And realistically, I think it's going to be a bit of a balance in the opening stages of the season, at least, to really see that almost consistency get into some of these teams for the start of the championship, because to get the points on the board early can really give some confidence into the team, and can really give themselves a bit of a boost as they get in towards the second half of the season, and you don't really want to be leaving yourself with too much to do. So I think those teams towards the top, the likes of the Lumen Motorsport team, and you've got the Glasstech team as well, really are ones to account for. It's going to get even more interesting, I think, when we get to this Pro-Am Teams Championship, because these guys are going to be fighting right through the midfields of their own respective classes, so it's going to be even more difficult to really pick out where they are in terms of championship points.
I don't think anybody's got any idea of how this is going to play out. So I think because obviously the Teams Championship's only going to come into play as we get more and more kind of into the rounds. So we'll have to see how that plays out. I've got a mobile phone going off somewhere there in the background, but never mind. So yeah, that's the Pro-Am Teams Championship. As I've just got an eye to my left-hand side, and I can see that the guys have gone into quali already. So we'll just touch basically quickly on the prizes. So we've got cash prizes for the team's championship. So the top 10 in each team will score a cash prize. The winners will get £100 each, all the way down to 10th place, which is £15. I think the key milestone here is probably 6 and above, because anything from 6 and above in the team's championship will recover the drivers their entry fee. So it will have meant that they've had a free season's racing, which I know a few of them have said to me that they're looking forward to having. We've then got the trophies. So the trophies are sponsored and provided by Kame. So we've got the top 10 drivers in the GT3 class, and we've got the top 10 drivers in the GT4 class will get a personalised driver trophy, and then the top 5 winning teams in each class. Speaking of sponsors, we'll just have a quick shout out. So we've got Trophy AI, we've got Kame, who provided the trophy for us, we've got Virtual Race School that will be providing a series of prizes throughout the season, and the league later on, and then we've got GP2 group, and last but no means least, we've got Motorsport UK. ESR was recognised as a Motorsport UK recommended community, which we were really proud of. So thanks to all the team there for working with us on that. And then the final thing to note is, you will have seen it in the chat, we've got the SDK Live Timing running, which if you click the link in the chat above or in the YouTube description below, you will be able to see the live timing of all the drivers throughout the session tonight. So I do believe that we are going to go racing, Dara. I think we are going to go racing, and we're going to see where we
Qualifying as well.
We are straight into quali, so it's going to be a time for us to really pick up the liveries as well from all the drivers. So I'll let you do a bit of the heavy lifting for a bit, and as I try and work the cameras as we see who's going to get where in this qualifying session.
Yeah, an important qualifying section, of course, to kick off a season. You really want to be getting that confidence up and really showing what you can do to some of the competitors in this series. Some of who are newer to ESR. You know, we've got some names that have been in here for quite a few years now, and I recognise from when I was here quite some time ago. It's great to see some times already popping on to the top of the time sheet. We've timed it perfectly, really, haven't we, James? Anton Kalo, top in the GT3s with a 1 minute 19.443. That's leapfrogged by not just Jason Baxter, but by Denzel Clarkson as well. Denzel Clarkson looking to keep himself right towards the front. The Guyanan driver, I do believe, just 3/10 behind Jason Baxter, and a fantastic opening lap from him, nearly into the 1 minute 18s already. William Humphrey, it's going to be a real shock to the system for regular viewers of GT4s here in ESR, leading the way in that slower of the two classes. But mind you, he's only about a second off of the slowest GT3 time we've got so far, albeit Andy Shell a little bit off the back of the rest of the pack. I think we're expecting to see William Humphrey about 5 seconds off the back of the rear of the field in the GT3s, but it goes to show really there's not going to be a great deal of difference between these cars. But despite that, it is only a short circuit, so we may start to see some lapping occur during this race.
I think we definitely will, and I think that the 5-second gap between William Humphrey and the back of the GT3s will only last for the formation lap, because I'm pretty sure that this track being a tight, twisty track, that the GT4, the gap between the GT3 and the GT4 isn't going to be as big as what we're going to see at Spa, for example, or maybe Silverstone. So yeah, it's a tricky little track that we've chose for the first round. I think with a 1 minute 19 lap, Jason Baxter's just done a 1 minute 19. I think with a sort of 1 minute 20 lap, it's not going to be too long before these cars are coming up against each other. As we look down at the timing so far, we said Stephen Donnelly was a bit of a dark horse and had some fantastic seasons. So Stephen's teaming up with Joe Sparrow in the JSD team. Fantastic Haribo liveries. We are going to get a bit closer look at the liveries a bit later. So we have tuned in one of the cameras to give us a bit of a close-up on the liveries. So here we can see Stephen's livery looking absolutely splendid there. So kind of makes you want some of those, to eat some of those sweets while we're commentating, Dara, doesn't it? Really looking at that.
No, I'd love some right now, if I'm honest. I could do with a bit of a sugar kick. I know many of us will have been up since 7 o'clock this morning for the Grand Prix. and it's never nice on a Sunday to have to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning. It's more like a weekday, isn't it? But yeah, it's been a long day, but we've got this to kind of keep it entertained, haven't we? And it was great to see that the liveries that are on the cars, they're updated so often from these drivers. They do such great work with the paint jobs, and we see it season to season. We've seen some great liveries of late. I remember there was the caramel bar livery. That was one of my personal favourites. Then we've had the DXTs. Yorkshire T livery, the Tetley T livery, they've been fantastic as well. But for some of the more manufacturers teams, the Moonshiners team, of course, Quartermasters as well, they've got a little bit more of a regimented livery. But it is great to see, and it is nice to almost get our eyes in and used to some of these liveries, because, to say, James, from the amount of races and the amount of varied races that I commentate on, it's sometimes difficult to remember the hundreds and hundreds of liveries that you see.
I'm sure it is. Well, I've got the benefit of only having to worry about ESR. So rather you than me. Here we've got Will Soper. So another team, the Axis Conehead Racing team. So Will Soper and I think it was it Chris Jennings that he was teaming up with. So again, another team there. So Will is qualified on P6 at the moment. Here's Matt Hoyland coming across the line. Is Matt going to improve from P8? I don't think he has done. No, that was a 1:19.8. So that might have been Matt's last lap. We've got Joe Glass down in P12. So I know that Joe's been working on a few liveries, because they've got Glasstech have got two teams in this championship. So they've got the Glasstech Racing team, and they've also got the Vulcan Fasters team, which I think was the livery that William was running. So we'll have to have a look at that a little bit later on. So Joe's down in P12 at the moment. It'll be interesting to see how Joe works his way through. I think Joe's definitely conscious of it being a marathon, not a sprint. Careful driver, so I'm expecting to see Joe kind of working his way through as the night goes on. We've got Henry Garcia that's just put a lap in. Henry Garcia is reserving for, I think, one of the Flatline team, no, one of the Rage teams actually. So Rage Against the Game Esports. I think we'll just call them one of the Rage teams, Dara Shaw. It's a little bit easier to a little bit easier to remember. And there he goes, they're stopping for us. So let's have a look. Nils Cooler. Nils Cooler's coming through. It's going to be tricky for me to navigate through this many. No.
And let's see what Nils can do. There's not a great deal more drivers who are yet to set lap times, is there? I mean, quite a lot of them have reached their maximum of the 4 laps that they can set in the qualifying session. So this session, even though they've got 10.5 minutes remaining officially, I can't see any driver that hasn't completed 2 full laps so far. So still a couple of drivers to maybe set some improved times, as Nils Kula does jump up just a position to go into P16. Adam Atherton reserving in that GT4 class goes into the top 18 as well, but we aren't expecting to see too many more lap times, albeit the lap time here very, very short. When you think about this being a GT3 and a GT4 car, 1 minute 19, 1 minute 25, is kind of the lap time you'd expect from a Formula car, a prototype. So to see them in these GT3s and GT4s shows that this is a compact circuit, and one that means that you're going to be some of these more technical parts of the circuit more often than you might otherwise want to be. Petrol leads to Silver, not going any quicker in his 1:55 entry. He's got Kostrick and Tristan Engelstad as well. They're not improving. Pedro Luis de Silva actually getting himself into the top 11. But I think generally, James, we are seeing most of the drivers having completed their session. Scott Kostrick could be one of those on a lap right now, but he's a long way down. Dave Van Dam and Andy Chell as well. Actually, I think Andy Chell could be a driver that we are looking for an improved lap time as he comes towards the line.
Yeah, I think Scott was just stopping off for a cup of tea there. I don't know what exactly he was working on. But yeah, luckily we've got Andy Chell still out there. So it's very kind of some of the drivers to go out a bit later. Scott must have got going again, so he's obviously poured his tea out of his flask and off he goes. So Andy Chell goes through with a 1:22.1, so that's putting Andy in P26 down in the GT3s. We've got 53 drivers, Dara, and I think the last time that you and I were on comms we had 54 GT4 drivers at Suzuka or Road Atlanta,
Yeah.
if I remember rightly. So
Road
fingers
Atlanta, I think it was.
fingers crossed, we try to cover everybody at least some point throughout the evening. And big apologies to any driver that we don't manage to cover. Just give us a shout in the EGTC channel, and we'll make sure that we more than double your coverage next week. But yeah, it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for us to get everybody on the stream. So that looks like all of the drivers through. Is Andy going to go out again? Let's have a quick look. Got lovely looking livery on there as Andy just disappears and leaves us to it. So that looks to be the grid, Dara. Let's have a look how that shapes up in the overall standings. So we've got William Humphrey in P27, who is 2.9 seconds behind Andy Chell in P26. And I think we've got a few drivers that have not set a time. Do we have drivers? No, we don't.
I think we only have Jason Haddington, in fact.
We do. You're right.
I think
Yeah, we
he's
do.
the only driver not to have set a lap time at all. So most drivers have been able to get their lap time underneath them. Scott Kostrick has set an improved middle sector, but his first sector is a long way off, so we wouldn't expect to see him improve. He's coming towards the line now, but he really is the last driver to be able to finish their qualifying session. When he crosses the line, we will be done. Everyone will have completed their allotted laps, and we should be able to get ourselves towards the race. Scott Kostrick tries to give us a bit of excitement, isn't it, down into the final corner. Maybe not exciting for him if he wants to improve up the timing sheets, but he spins it around nicely, and with no one around him, he looks like he's going to start P50 at this track, where, let's be real, James, there isn't too much room for 20 cars to get off the line, let alone 50.
Well, it is a 1 hour race, Dara. So, I mean, they have got enough time to kind of take the time, if that makes sense. So they've not got to try and achieve everything straight away on the first lap. Let's jump on board with Scott as he takes us round a lap in his Porsche GT4. I noticed that Scott didn't have his spec map loaded, so I'll be having a quiet little word with Scott later before 2 weeks' time. So yeah, I was following John Rudbrook for a few laps yesterday, and that last corner, me having a very, very heavy right foot, no finesse whatsoever, and lap after lap, I kept just spinning out the back end, exactly what Scott's just done there. So, oh dear, commentator's coincidence, that one, Dora, I think. So he won't be thanking me for this later, will he? Oh dear, but at least he's providing us a bit of entertainment. We've got Dean Sargent also on a lap, so let's go on board with Dean. Is he going to give us another lap, or is this going to be?
That's it for Dean. Timing page says that he's now completed 4 laps in this session, unless he's able to just go for one extra here. Scott Kostrick, I don't think it's going to be improving at all. Tyres don't really look like they're going to be in much of an operating window now towards the end of the session, but it really is just a couple of drivers left on track now, as we do see Clyde Veyer out of the garage as well. But again, I don't think he's going to be able to set an improved lap time unless they can just go for one extra, as he has come out of the pit lane. So, bit of an empty track when you consider that there's over 50 cars loaded into the session, but we will see them all out very, very shortly in the race, as we've only got 4.5 minutes left of qualifying per run here, James.
It certainly won't be empty in another 4 minutes 30 seconds, that's for sure. So yeah, the reason that we put the longer quali on rather than the normal 15-minute was to allow some drivers to go out early, some drivers to go out late, and if the drivers wanted to go and get all their laps done, they could then take that 5-minute break, maybe use the bathroom before they get into a 1 hour race without having the separate warm-up attached after it. That's sometimes the drivers, some of the drivers say that they're not really too fussed about. So yeah, that's the reason for the slightly longer qualifying session. But any standouts for you, or any surprises, Dara, in the timing tower that you can see so far? I mean, let's be honest, we're not really surprised about William Humphrey. What about the GT3s? Any standouts there?
I think it's so exciting to see that the top two are split by, it says 1,000th there, but an 062 and an 064 is 2,000ths apart for pole position. Absolutely incredibly close towards the front of the field. And even all the way down, you can see how close the gaps really are between the guys in the group. Joe Glass up in the top 13. We'll have to see if he can move forward from there, but really is a compact order, isn't it? When you look up and down the timing page, with the exception of Andy Chell, with him being just over a second off the back, the field spread is less than 2 seconds from 1st to 25th, which is fantastic to see and really sets us up well for what should hopefully be an exciting race and an exciting season that lies ahead of us. And I think Clyde Veyer is likely to be starting towards the back of those GT3s, not able to improve on the last lap. He really is now the only driver on the racetrack, but the Maltese driver, he's got the roam of the place, isn't he? No one else around him can really kind of do what he likes for the next 2.5 minutes.
He does, and I've just noticed that he's running an absolute fantastic race number there in 66. So I'll be rooting for Clyde throughout the race. So yeah, lovely looking livery from Clyde there, topped off with that fantastic number 66. So he's also given us a few laps. I think some of the standout drives for me, looking at this, is probably Luke Bailey in 11th place, that reserve driver with a 1:19.7. So I know I've raced against Luke quite a few times in some of the GT3 leagues. He's a quick peddler, is Luke, but that's incredibly quick. Andre Muntian as well. Andre Muntian in P18. So Andre was in the Evo class last season in the GT3s, and by the end of the season he was beating most of the Premier drivers, certainly beating me anyway, but that's not difficult, but beating most of the Premier drivers. So yeah, big shout out to him up there. I mean, these times are so close. I mean, if you look, you know, what have we got? We've got, my goodness me, we've got in the 1:19s the top 15. So from a 1:19.0 through a 1:19.9, so 9/10 separating the top 15 drivers. This is going to be incredibly close, incredibly close. And when they've also got to come up against the drivers, the GT4 drivers, a bit later on in the race, it's going to be really interesting to see who can kind of safely navigate through and maybe, you know, pick those overtaking manoeuvres at the right places. Because if they get it wrong and they go on a corner, one incident, you know, with a bit of damage could put them, you know, a lot further back than they were otherwise.
That is a bit of almost the risk, isn't it, for a lot of the drivers, is that kind of like risk-reward balance that they have to really face. We were talking about it a lot during the Sebring 12-hour yesterday, because that's, you know, an endurance race. It's a 12-hour long, in a way, 12-hour long sprint race. It's that risk-reward balance of how much do you push early on compared to, you know, are you really going to try and make aggressive moves and maybe undo the good work that you've done in the early stages in the opening hour or two. The same kind of concept can be brought over here to this European GT Championship, because with 10 rounds, and each round being at least an hour's worth of racing, how aggressive do you want to go towards the start of the championship? There's almost those microcosms of that in each individual race, but as a championship overall, how much are you willing to push here tonight at the Sachsenring, the difficult circuit and narrow circuit in parts, to really make things work for you? Or will you almost be happy to consolidate what you've got so far? Maybe a good qualifying result could give you some decent points as it is. I think that'll be weighing on some of the drivers' minds here, it's fair to say. And James, we've got the grid. Would you like to go through the grid, James?
You seem far better than me, Dara. So given the timing, off you go. All yours.
Right, let's see. We've got a lap. We've got a full formation lap to get it done as well, which should be more than enough. But it is going to be Anton Kalo who leads the field to green, the Finnish driver. Hopefully, for his sake, going to finish in first ahead of Jason Baxter, who lines up just alongside him, 1,000th officially between the two on the front row. Gianni Tehar and Denzel Clarkson, the Guyanan, on row number 2, with Zelinskas in the top 5, making up 5 nationalities in the top 5 on the grid, showing just how international ESR is becoming. Will Soper, Ben Bennyworth and Matt Hoyland inside the top 8. Those 3 very close together inside with the times in qualifying, with James Warren not too far behind either. Jaden Scott and Luke Bailey, the reserve driver, and Christian Chard make up the top 6 rows, with Joe Glass just inside the top 13, ahead of Robin Aston and Adam Baker, the top 15 drivers, all within a second of that pole time. Dave Van Dam, Alok Iyengar and Andre Muntian inside the top 18, with Joe Sparrow and Clyde Veyer having to start their races in the GT3 class, just inside the top 20. The final 6 GT3s consist of Bruno Silva and Dean Sheesby that make up row 11. Lewis Plath and Dean Sargent on row number 12, and of course Lewis's home race at the Sachsenring. Andrew Fellows and Andy Chow will be the final 2 GT3s. And we'll see if they can move forward and keep themselves ahead of a very fast-looking GT4 field led by William Humphrey, who took pole by a little bit more than 1/1000 of a second, nearly 3/10 of a second ahead of Chris Jennings in that 1-2-2. Stephen Donnelly, the Irishman, and the Danish Marius Hibmer make up row number 2. Some drivers that we've seen a lot in the GT4 championships here in ESR of late, getting themselves into the European GT Championship. And we'll see if those battles can continue. Henry Garcia and Adam Atherton, an all-reserve GT4 row 3 with Bobby Moss and Sergio Ferreira on the 4th row in class on the 17th row overall. The Swedish man Tristan Engelstadt will start 35th ahead of John Lebrook and Martin Kenyon. It'll be Pedro Luis da Silva, Sean Moriarty and Linus Petkavicius inside the top 40. In his number 245 SRB Motorsport car. There are more to come as well. We haven't just got those 40 drivers lining up for us this evening. It's Nick Stubb and Malcolm Coates on row 21 with Niels Kula and Mike Fowler in 43rd and 44th. Jelle Damstra and Craig Hewlett, Rob Gregg and Callum Morrow inside the top 48 with Simon Hunt and Scott Kostrick rounding out our top 50. Pete Paiva, Ian Chambers and Jason Harrington. 53 cars on the grid, James. This is going to be one hectic opening race of the season.
It is, and you're so polite because you were nudging me along there, and I was too busy trying to do something else in the background.
I've done this before.
Yeah, a little bit of a well, it's ESR, mate. You can do what you want and say what you want with us. But yeah, so I mean, this is just going to be absolutely amazing. 53 cars split into 2 grids. We're going to have to try and cover a little bit of the start from the GT3s and then work our way back to the GT4s. If we just drop down into the group tower, that might help us out a little bit. So yeah, I think we've got a new start procedure for this season, both in the European GT Championship and the GT3s. So we do not go on green. There's no overtaking before the start line. So all of the cars behind the front row have to wait until the 2 cars in front of them have started to accelerate, and then they can go. The only driver who can go on green, or 1 second, no longer than 1 second after green, is the poleman. P2 has to wait until P1 goes, and we're following exactly the same for the GT4s. Wow, what a look that is coming down the hill with all those GT3 cars followed by the GT4s as they come round. The reason we do that start procedure is to try to minimise incidents on the first lap, and it's proved quite successful for us over the time. But as they come through now, Dara, I'll let you take it away as I try to keep up with the action on what probably will be quite a hectic first lap.
Yeah, 1 hour will be on the clock as the pace car is about to roll back in. GT3, so many of them about to get racing. GT4 is just in behind as well. A brand new season is about to get going here at the Sachsenring. It's ESR's GT European Championship, and Anton Kalo will lead us to green for the opening time this season. Jason Baxter and Jenny Tehar just in behind as the lights are on. The green flag flies, and there's a couple of drivers pulling out immediately of the pack. 3 wide, nearly 4 wide into the opening turn, with Denzel Clarkson trying to find an inside line. Jenny Tehar as well, looking to try and put his way to the inside at a difficult opening corner. Already a spin, already that's Denzel Clarkson going around at the opening turn, and a little bit of chaos as well. The GT4s are going to have to stumble across this as well as more cars go around through turn number 2. Those who have got through are going to be very, very pleased indeed, because there was a lot of chaos in behind. Cars dropping down the order in the GT4s as well, but generally in both of our classes, the GT3s and the GT4s, the leaders have got away well. The likes of Clyde Veyer, Jayden Scott and Dean Sargent, you can see already falling into those GT4 cars. Yeah, we'll have a look back a bit later on. Obviously there's been an incident in the first turn which has put a number of people out of position, so we will try a bit later on in the race and go back and cover that. But for the time being, we've got Anton Kilo, who's leading out front with Jason Baxter in second place, followed by Gianni Terhar with the Rumus Zelinskas right behind him, with Ben Bennyworth behind him, and Matt Hoyland currently in P6. So a good getaway for all the drivers, probably in the top 8 to 10 maybe. So the incident must have been somewhere around that P10 mark. I think I saw Joe Sparrow
in there somewhere, and Joe Sparrow's now currently running in P16. He's got Louis Plath behind him, and Joe is carrying a little bit of damage, as you can see there. So yeah, Joe has been involved in that incident. Whether or not that car's going to be drivable for him for much longer, I don't know. The drivers do have one fast repair, but obviously for Joe, if he's got to come into the pits, then he's not going to be able to refuel till the end of the race. So I imagine that Joe's going to be trying to take that as far as he can, up until the point that he can go into the pits and fuel and get the fast repair. In the meantime, in the GT4s, we've got William Humphrey. There's no surprise, he's in the lead. So William did manage to make it through, and we've got Marius Hibner in second place, followed by Henry Garcia a little bit further behind. So as we have a look in the group tower, which might make this a little bit easier, yeah, we've got Henry Garcia, the reserve driver, in P3, and Stephen Donnelly in P4 behind him. So as the GT4s are coming through, as we've got a car on the outside, Andre Muntian looks like he's gone off track and he's actually stopped. So again, we'll try and catch that a little bit later on, but certainly very, very hectic, Dora, in this first couple of opening laps, which is exactly what we expected, to be honest.
Yeah, it really is, and cars fanning out all over the road now. They are populating pretty much every single corner of this circuit already, and we're only 3 minutes into this race. Dean Sheesby, one of the cars dropping down the order. Denzel Clarkson, of course, starting inside that top four, was probably the biggest victim of the opening corner, to drop all the way to the back of not just the GT3 field, but the field in its entirety, and he's currently down in, well, P, a long way away. He is down in P, is that 30 overall? My time page, it's not right. 33 is where he is. There we go, thank you. I had to scroll across, I wasn't looking in the right place, but he's P33, and should be faster than a lot of the cars around him. Of course, GT3 far superior to the GT4s, but it's just that getting through for overall position that it's going to lose him quite a lot of time here, and it's not going to be something that he can really be affording to do in the early stages if he has any designs on a decent result come the end of the hour-long race. Ben Bennyworth with a good start, though, for his Quartermass Motorsport Bravo car. Quartermass with some very distinctive liveries. I know that Ben Bennyworth, along with the likes of Andy Chell, have been doing a lot of work and have been entering into the Motorsports UK GT Challenge in the last few weeks. That'll be finishing over the next couple of weeks, but Quartermass have been involved in that, clearly involved here as well, and that confidence that they can carry over from that Tuesday night event here onto a Sunday is clearly being shown with the fact that Ben Bennyworth maybe looked for an inside move on Zielinski's in towards turn one. Didn't really work out, but clearly there's some desire there. That's really what you need, isn't it, at this kind of stage of the race?
It is, and right behind him you've got the praying mantis of Matt Hoyland. So I think he was having a little look, expecting those guys to maybe just have a little bit of a nudge, come together. So Matt just thought about it, thought better of it, and he's sticking right to the back. So Matt, be really, really happy with that, running in P6. We've got Will Soper as well, just behind Matt. So he's just dropped off the back of it for Axis Sim Sport Red. Just dropping off the back of these, but I mean, that little bit of free track will at least give him that bit of safety, that if there is an incident ahead, he can just avoid it and hopefully take avoiding action. So yeah, good clean start from the front runners there. Let's jump on board with Joe Glass and see how Joe's getting on. So currently running P11, so that must be Joe up one position from where he started. I think he started in P12 if I remember rightly. So we've got Joe with Christian Chard right behind him and Dave Van Dam behind him, and then we've got Joe Sparrow. Joe Sparrow's still managing to get that McLaren. I think it is a McLaren. Is it McLaren? Yeah, it is a McLaren. He's trying to get that McLaren around the track with no front bumper whatsoever. So yeah, fair play to him. But a bit of blinking going on there for Bruno Silva as he just drops up the inside. So we'll have to keep an eye out on that. Bit of blinking's not great for those drivers around you, but it's often the case that the driver doesn't know about it themselves until afterwards. But we do ask that all drivers are in the voice chat, so that if they are blinking, they can be let know by other drivers. So Andrew Fellows up to P18 as well. So the sole Flat Ryan Racing driver looks like he's having a bit of a cruise out there in P18. I think Andrew will be quite happy with that. I can't remember where he qualified, but But yeah, P18 overall, lovely looking livery as well from Andrew. So I think he'll be more than satisfied at the moment.
Do I think there's a few drivers in the opening stages of this race that they're going to be happy to have almost got themselves through the opening phase of chaos and the opening couple of laps where you didn't really know where to look and there were cars all over the road. I mean, we've only been going 7 minutes and already the GT3s are at the back of the GT4s, and this is going to be a running theme all race long. The traffic management is going to be absolutely crucial. And this is the first championship, really, where we're going to be seeing a lot of this traffic management occur in ESR. And so a lot of these guys who may know each other inside and out from racing wheel to wheel in the same class may have to almost adjust somewhat to see some of their former rivals going through far quicker than them. But that's just because they are in different classes. Also a difficult circuit to really judge some of the lapping that occurs, particularly in the opening sector. A little bit easier as you get towards these left-handers, of which there are many around this circuit. Of course, 13 corners, 3 of which are to the right, 10 of which are to the left, just to give a perspective on just how dominant it is on the, how much wear there's going to be put through the right front tyres in this race. But Anton Kahler looks like he's managing it pretty well, and look at the amount of clean air he's got for the time being. He's going to absolutely love that, and it means that he can almost try and build up a little bit more of a gap to Jason Baxter, who is just about hanging on to the coattails for the time being, because Gianni Terhara and Matt Hoyland are really dropping quite significantly away.
They are. I think Gianni will be quite happy with this. I think Gianni will be quite happy with this so far. P3 in class, P3 overall, and he can still see the 2 drivers in front of him. So yeah, I think if I was Gianni now, I'd be thinking, right, I've just got to stay on the back of these 2 guys, maybe think about the undercut. Is he looking at fuel saving? Because there's going to be a pit stop, we think probably about 40 minutes into the race. We've just got Joe Glass that's made a move on Alok Iyengar, or is it Alok Iyengar that's actually had an incident? He has had an incident, he's off track, and he's got Joe Sparrow, the bumperless Joe Sparrow, now coming to try and get through. So we might have a quick look back. Another driver we've not mentioned is Adam Baker, so for LS Racing. We've not seen much of Adam at the moment, running P16, so reasonable result for Adam. I would imagine Adam would be quite happy with that. He's got Lewis Plath just behind him in a sister team, so I don't imagine that he'll feel too threatened by that. And then he'll see the 2 cars battling in front, and then we've got Andrew Fellows just making his way past one of the GT4 drivers. So let's have a look at the GT4s, Dara, because we've not actually managed to do much coverage yet. So we'll stay on board with the GT4s for a little while, and we'll work our way through.
Yeah, let's have a look towards the front of the field. Stephen Donnelly, of course, in that Haribo liveried car. I mean, I think for his performance, he'll be loving it. So for the time being, at least. Henry Garcia almost just a bit of a roadblock at the moment, and being a reserve, I think Stephen Donnelly would be hopeful to get through as soon as he possibly can. That gap being built up to Marion Zimmer and Willie Humphrey to the point where it's going to be very concerning for the Irishman in the in the Mercedes car in the number 30 as they run their way towards the back end of the circuit. Turn 1 just to the left-hand side here. You can't quite see it as the barriers make a very clear split between the parts of the circuit, but there's a very clear split between the front of the GT4 field and the chasing pack, and Henry Garcia is the one to lead the group. Bobby Moss is dropping down the group, though, because he is finding some moss on the inside of the corner. In the grass he goes in that 555. That's not the right line, and that car going very, very slowly on the racing line. Looks like there may be some damage, or maybe he's just struggling to get back up to speed.
He probably is, yeah, probably is. Having been off track, lost a bit of grip off the tyres. So here we jump on board with Callum Morrow, looking up the inside of John Ludbrook. So John Ludbrook's currently running in P10. I know he did a little bit of practicing yesterday. So we'll have a quick look at John sporting his new GP2 livery. So as he gets overtaken by Andre Montien, working his way back through. So John's running in P10. Didn't have too much confidence yesterday, John. He was when we were doing the practice session, he was struggling to get it turned in. I think this is, for some of these drivers, the first time that they've been running the open setups on the GT4 cars. So this is going to be a little bit of a learning curve, and as far as we could see, there were no setups available in various platforms for that particular car on this track. So I think John was running something like a Barcelona setup. So yeah, John's got Nils Cooler coming through as well. So Nils Cooler looks like he's got the bit between his teeth, currently P12. Probably expect Nils to be a little bit further up than this based on his previous battles with Robin Noel Brown and Liam Fraser in the GT4 Championship. No Liam Fraser here tonight because he's a reserve driver for the Moonshiners team. As Nils looks up the inside, is he going to get the job done? He is going to get the job done. And as we've got 2 GT3 drivers, that looks like the leaders coming through. It is the leaders coming through. So Nils takes the inside. We've got Anton Kilo and Jason Baxter working the way through. So this is going to be absolutely hectic for these guys. As Anton looks like he's just dropped a little bit of time. But I guess that's going to be normal. It's going to be a bit of a concertina while they're in traffic. So it's going to close up when Jason gets close to a GT4, and then it's going to stretch out again like now. John's just following his line, leaves a bit of space. Anton goes up the inside, working his way back through.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the running theme, isn't it, really, where we see the GT3s just having to negotiate their way through and almost just manage the traffic. That's going to be such an important factor, not just in this race, but in the series as a whole. Nearly inside and outside coming through there, but just about avoiding in the end was that number 37 of Gianni Terha, Matt Hoyland just in behind as they run their way through on the back of Nils Cooler in this 1:04 entry that we're looking at. But the battle for the lead in the GT3s has now come down to 0.2 of a second. Jason Baxter may be within range of going for a move, not quite in towards the penultimate turn, turn number 12, but he is very close, sitting on the rear wing of Anton Kalo for the time being. And for the first time in this race, really, Anton Kalo having to drive on the wing mirrors rather than driving through the wind screen right now. Nearly a quarter of this race has already elapsed, and we are seeing the top two get away a little bit from Gianni Terha and Matt Hoyland, but they are much closer at the front of the field, in the top 5 at least, than we have seen in the GT4 class, with some of the gapping out we have already seen. William Humphrey, in fact, still even ahead of one of the GT3s, just goes to show how good his pace has been in the early stages of this race.
Yeah, and we've got Matt Hoyland must have taken, I think last time we looked at Matt, he was in P6 or P5. He's now up to P4, so Matt must have taken advantage of the traffic, and he's now sat right behind Gianni Terha. He can see the leaders in front, so Matt will be really pleased with this. He'll be working his way through, can see the leaders. Yeah, good day at the office so far for Matt.
I think Matt's definitely going to be looking to move his way forward ahead of Gianni Terha and Jason Baxter and Anton Keller, if he can, of course, but he's been well within range to give it a go at least. Humphrey, though, you can just see how confident he looks. GT4, he really is an absolute specialist in, and has that lead of 8.5 seconds to Miro Sipner. He has 15 seconds to P3. We've only been going 14.5 minutes in this race. It's absolutely incredible to see the amount of pace that he can start to pull out. And I mean, if he was able to keep this kind of pace up, we would genuinely be talking about William Humphrey lapping most of his own field here. Such is the pace advantage that he currently has. He's taking out more than a second a minute on the rivals behind him. And, you know, if you do the maths on that, he'll just be over a minute ahead by the end. And only 1 minute 20 or so per lap, 1 minute 25 in the GT4s. Maybe most of the field that is going to be overtaken by the end of the race. So incredible consistency. And even as I've been speaking, James, that gap's already gone up to 16.5 seconds between first and third. Incredible.
I think it's probably to be expected, because this kind of track, I think this small, tight, twisty track will suit William down to the ground. So a really, really good performance for the Glasstec team, with Joe running in P11 and William running in P1. You know, they'll be quite happy if the race ends up finishing like that. We've got Pedro Luis da Silva. We must have Stephen Donnelly off the track. We do. We'll just have a little look there. We might start to see what happened to Stephen Donnelly. It's not come through on my screen. I don't know why that's not come through on my screen, so we won't be able to go back and see that just yet. I don't know quite what's happening there. But yeah, Stephen's had a bit of an incident. He was previously running up with Martin Kenyon in P4. Whereas Mark Martin he was on this pack here. So Stephen, I think it was just before the final turn. So yeah, we've got Ben Bennyworth working his way through the GT4s as well. So Ben's currently running in P5. James Warren, P6. Not really mentioned much about James. James is having a bit of a quiet night of it so far, but a good result in P6. So he'll be quite pleased with that. And he's got Will Soper for company as well. So we know Will's a quick driver from the GT3 series, sporting that new Axis Conehead livery, which I think Thomas has made for them, which does look absolutely superb in that lovely matte black finish. So yeah, Will's kind of still in there with a bit of a shout. Can see the 2 or 3 drivers in front of him, and they've got traffic. Then we've got Luke Bailey, that lovely Vulcan Fasteners livery. So Luke is taking the place of Matt Jones. Matt can't be with us tonight, so Luke is doing a sterling job. I think highest reserve in the GT3, highest reserve. And then we've got Henry Garcia, who is the highest reserve running currently in GT4s. There's a bit of a flash of the lights there from Luke as he comes up to the GT4s to let him know that he's going to be coming through. And the GT4 car nicely makes his way. We've got Pedro looking like he's making a bit of a move there on, I think that's Scott Cosgrove with a little bit of damage. It is. So as they work their way through here, yeah, I don't know about you, Dora, but I'm struggling to keep up with where everybody is on track. I mean, the timing tower's great, but it's such a short, twisty, small little track. It's so easy to kind of get lost in where everybody is.
And it's a bit like a maze at the Sachsenring as well, quite literally, with the opening sector getting back on itself. And then there's a car off the track. That's Martin Kenyon going around in that DXT car. That's not where you want to be stopped either. He's going to get back onto the racing line, hopefully avoiding anybody else around him, and he will indeed. I think Linus Petkovicius as well had a bit of a moment. Let's see a bit of a replay, though, as we run through with Martin Kenyon as he just emerges from behind those trees. Is he going to get hit by the 112? He is. The slightest of taps, but enough to send him around. That's not what he needed at all, but smart rejoin. Didn't get in the way of anybody. Oh, that's where Petkovicius went off, I should say. You can see him going to the outside line with cars on his inside. Oh, it gets very close, though, as they run in towards turn 11. Oh, I think there was contact there with Martin Kenyon. I'm not too sure, as there were other cars coming through with him. Petkovicius is trying to negotiate the 245 to come through on him, but pretty dramatic couple of minutes and still side-by-side for Kenyon. He doesn't catch a break on this lap, it seems.
Yeah, it's I suppose it goes from bad to worse is when you've had one spin. It didn't look like it was Martin's fault as well. It looked like Martin had kind of got the inside line. I guess those left-handers are difficult to know whether, as a GT3 driver, you think the GT4 driver's leaving you space, and then all of a sudden the GT4 driver comes across, and there's not really a lot that anybody can do about that. As we've got Andrew Fellows coming up the inside of John Ludbrook there, and it looks like Nils Culler's just picked his pocket and gone through. Is that Nils or is that Chris Jennings? Got the 104. It is Nils Culler, yeah. So the battles between Nils Culler and a Kamei GP2 car continue. So yeah, John will feel a little bit short-changed by that, I'm sure. Andrew Fellows just elbowing his way through. Let's have a little jump on board with Nils and see what John can see, as he's probably thinking, right, how am I going to get that place back? This is for P8 as well in class, so these two are having quite a good run. Martin Kenyon, to say that he's had some incidents, he's still running in P7, so it's not all bad for Martin. So still running P7 in class with these two just behind him. This is the corner that when we were practicing yesterday, Dara, that it just invites you to brake late, and then as soon as you do, wham, you're just out to the right hand side on that gravel, and there's no saving it.
It does tighten on the exit a bit, doesn't it? At that corner, almost an optical illusion as you're on your way through, a little bit at the final corner as well, with the fact that you rise over that crest as you go through the final corner. It was unsighted where the gravel trap starts on the outside, so a similar point can be made for turn number 12 as well. We'll have a quick look up at Joe Glass's progress. He's inside the top 9 for the time being, but right on the back of Dave Van Dam, and Dave going a little bit wider than I think he'd otherwise want to as they start to run their way in towards these left-handers. It's worth noting really that there's so much left-hand rotation that we are talking about something like 630 degrees of anti-clockwise rotation after you get out of turn number 3. It really is a hell of a lot of work for the right front tyre to be doing. And I think by the end of this race, if drivers don't change their tyres in the pit stops, could find themselves really screaming towards the end. That car, the 22, is going to be screaming, I think, from the damage, quite frankly.
That was Dave Van Dam. Yeah, we just missed that at the time. So there was a great little battle going on between Joe Glass, Dave Van Dam, and I think Bruno Silva was also involved as well. So yeah, that's put Joe up to P8. So marathon, not a sprint, and it looks like there's some dust kicking up from someone else as Joe works his way through. So yeah, nicely working his way through. We've also got James Warren as well, closed up onto the back of Ben Bennyworth. So there's a nice little battle going on here for P4, because they're quite a little, they're 11 seconds behind Matt Hoyland, but then these three are running together. So Matt Hoyland's now worked his way up into P3. What's happened to Gianni Tahar? Gianni Tahar has he had an incident or has he pitted? That's going to be the question. Has he had an incident?
Yeah, I think that's
has
good.
He pitted? Is it a bit too early to pit? I suppose by now they're going to, with 70% fuel capacity, they're going to be able to top the car up to finish to the end of the race. Another question is, just interesting in what you've just said about the tyres there, is are they going to take tyres in this race with there being so many left-handers, or are they just going to maybe take 2 right-hand tyres? What are your thoughts?
I would suspect that if tyres are to be taken, they will take right-side tyres. Whether they'll take left-side tyres as well, I think is maybe a slightly different question, because the amount of load you put through those left-hand tyres isn't as much. But however, there's still so much rotation at this circuit. I think at that point it's really worth just changing all 4 tyres. I think some may attempt just changing 2, but the smart option would probably be, in terms of pace, to take the 4. The question for the drivers would be, do they feel like they can regain that time that they lose for taking the extra tyres by being able to use the rubber underneath them during that second stint in this race? But I think over the next 10-15 minutes we are going to see that pit stop phase start to occur. Of course, drivers likely to run the tanks as dry as they can before making that pit stop, because I'm sure, as you all know, James, from previous races, you don't really want to be running with the car with too much fuel inside. If you can get away with lower fuel loads in the car for larger proportions of the race, then that's going to be able to get you that little bit more pace and could give you an extra position or two to the end of this hour-long encounter, which for a season opener could be really crucial for the confidence for the championship, as we have talked about. But even so, still some really interesting battles that I think still have to be settled out. Not at the front of the GT4s, though. We can almost forget about that being a battle. GT3s, though, interesting inside the top 3 and interesting inside the top 10, with James Warren, as we can see here, looking at Ben Bennyworth, but no move available around the outside there.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the tyre situation. So it costs you more time to take 4 tyres than it does 2. But as I once found out, I think, if I remember rightly, you need taking the 2 lefts or the 2 rights is quicker than taking the 2 fronts or the 2 rears. So I think you can take the 2 right-hand tyres, and that would be a lot quicker than taking all 4. So we might find that some drivers just take a side of tyres. We might find that some drivers take all 4 tyres. I personally think that maybe taking all 4 might not be worth it, because the tyres, generally speaking, can run around an hour, comfortably around an hour, at the pace that I'm going, not the pace that some of these are going. But yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how many take, what tyres they take, and when we speak to the drivers afterwards to see, you know, what their strategies were regarding tyres.
Yeah, and I think that's a running theme that we're going to have to watch throughout this race and really throughout the season, because with every different track that we go to, I think there's going to be different ideas in terms of which way the strategy is going to be going. You can see side by side just in the background there, Joe Glass getting through on Luke Bailey as They come in towards turn 1 as well. Moves to be made up and down the order. Henry Garcia trying to get himself back to the top 3. Craig Hewlett there now. But these guys have been racing just over 26 minutes. Third place in the GT4s is 34 seconds off of the back of William Humphrey, who leads the race. Insane amounts of pace for William Humphrey in a field with more than a few drivers. To have that much speed, he really is on track to lap 75%, if not more, of his own class in this race. And, I mean, he's turning up here and showing why I think GlassTech are going to be a very, very difficult team to beat over the course of the season. Joe doing a great job in P7 as well, picking up the points that they really need. Doesn't necessarily have to be winning the races if William Humphrey puts in performances like this week in, week out.
Well, I'm not surprised at William at all with how dominant he's been in that first season 1 of the GT4 Championship that we did between GT4 and nobody to touch him, so dominant. So you know, to marry is a bit of a, but I do may kind of, you know, maybe William being lucky enough to work his way through, as we've got to Porsche that works his way through Craig Hewlett. So Craig's nicely worked his way up to P3 in the HSR Motorsport Mercedes, I think he's running there. So he's got company from Henry Garcia behind him. It looks like, has Craig got a slowdown? Or is Henry just taking a wider line? This is going to be interesting as they come into the first corner. Yeah, it looked initially like Henry had got a great run on Craig there for P3. But actually it was just the camera angle and the fact that they were letting some of the GT3 cars through. So yeah, great result or great performance from Craig so far. Another close gap we've got is John Ludbrook. So John Ludbrook is running P11. So Nils Cooler's up the road. He's now got, oh, somebody's up the road. There's a crash there. Is that, I've got something showing as Dean Sheesby, but it didn't look like Dean Sheesby, so apologies if that's not you, Dean. Let's just have a quick look. It looked like a GT4 car, but we're going to find out now. It was Dean, just all of his own accord, just having a slip on that outside. So he won't be too pleased. Yeah, I just saw that. He won't be too pleased with how things are working out. But yeah. John Ludbrook, who's he got behind John Ludbrook? So it's saying Andre Muntian. So that must be, is that William? No, it's not William, is it? Who's John Ludbrook got behind him? Did he have
John Ludbrook.
The Porsche.
He currently has. I think that's Matt Hoy. Is it Matt Hoyland in the Corvette? Nearby? No, that's just in front of him, isn't it? I think that must be a car a lap down then.
It's Nick Stubb who's a lap down. That's
yes,
right.
It is.
It's the Vulcan Fasters. I did tell you that it would take us a little while to get used to the names and the liveries. So yeah, that's so Nick's down in P25 at the moment. So he's obviously had a few incidents that he will be disappointed with. So yeah, he'll have to be hoping for a slightly better second half to the race as we now just cross over the halfway point. Wow, this race is it's going quick and it's difficult to keep up with.
Yeah, flying by, isn't it? Opening half an hour already disappeared from us, and I mean, well, it's disappeared from William Humphrey, but William Humphrey is half a lap ahead of Martin Kenyon in his own class right now, with half of the race still to run. So he's on track to, if he can. It was slightly more difficult to overtake people in your own class. Oh, there's contact though up in front. That was the number 5. Who was that? That's one of the Quartermass cars that was involved in a collision. The number 5 is Andy Chell, the Quartermass driver coming into the pit lane. He was involved in some kind of collision. For Andy, at least this could be covered as his one and only pit stop in the race, maybe a little bit sooner than he otherwise would have wanted, but we could just about see that bit of debris being flown up off of the racing surface as they ran their way through the penultimate corner. A little bit of argy-bargy going on, and something more than shoulder barging as they made their way in towards the final turn. Teammate to NHL, one of the other quartermaster cars coming out of the pit lane. I believe that's Ian Chambers, dropping now down to P22. Indeed it is, in the GT4 class. They've got a little bit, both of those drivers for quartermaster, with a little bit more work to do in the remaining 28 minutes or so. Not so much work to do for Jason Baxter. James, he's 6 seconds now in the lead. 19 seconds back to Ben Bennyworth.
Yeah, I wonder if Anton Kilos had an incident, or has Anton pitted early to try and get the undercut and maybe come out before the traffic. So it does look like Anton has pitted. So if I'm reading my timing screens correctly, Anton looks like he has pitted. So this is going to be interesting. See, I'm guessing that Jason will be taking it to the as far to the end as he can, as we've got 3, 4 wide coming through. GT3s, GT4s. My goodness me! I'll tell you what. I'm glad I'm sat here than rather than being out on track with these guys. This looks absolutely chaotic. But yeah, Jason's worked his way through. 6.6 second lead. Matt Hoyland also not been in the pits. I think it's telling me that Anton is the first driver that's actually had his pit stop. I don't know whether you can see from your timing screen, Dara, but that's what it looks like to me. So that could potentially be a bit of a game changer there, depending on if that is correct.
Yeah, so he came in on lap 22 in this race. So he is the first driver to blink. Mind you, we are on to lap 25 now. So a couple of laps ago is when Anton made his way down pit lane, but he's got a 5-second gap up to Joe Glass in front of him. So I think the concern is necessarily there too soon for the Finnish driver, but we started this race in the GT3 class with 5 nationalities inside the top 5. Right now, top 5 are all Brits, so that's changed around somewhat after 37.5 minutes worth of racing. Luke Bailey, one of the reserve drivers in there for the Vulcan Fastness by Glasstech car, trying to make his way through some of this traffic. Cars all over each other down here as we make our way in towards the tricky turn 8 and then into 9 and 10. But everyone climbing over each other right now. Luke Bailey will get to the inside of the 104 and will negotiate his way through on Niels Cooler in that Lexus SimSport car. But a bit more chaotic than I think he would have wanted, but still close towards the back of Christian Chard. That could be an interesting move to keep an eye on, as is the one between Denzel Clarkson, who spun on the opening corner, remember, and Joe Sparrow in that Haribo car, who required a little bit of repairs on that car after he got some damage early on.
Yeah, it's nice to see that they've done a good repair job on Joe's car. He'll be quite pleased with that, I think. So he'll be back up to his normal pace, so P14. It's got Denzel Clarkson just in front of him, so I think we'd identified Denzel as one of the drivers that had that incident at the start of the race and was affected by that. So we've got Denzel that just looks like he's working his way past. Is that Dean Sheesby, I think, the 52 driver? As Denzel just looks like he's got a little bit squirrely coming out of the final turn there, and has that given Joe Sparrow the run? Well, it certainly doesn't need much of an opening, does Joe? So he looks like he's going to have a little go up the inside, and he does leave it late up the inside, and oh dear. So yeah, that's I'm not exactly sure what happened there. I think
we have to see it again.
Yeah, I think Joe was looking to make an overtake on Denzel.
Oh.
Denzel just lets Joe go. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, I mean, Joe going far too hard into the corner, wasn't he? I mean, he was overtaking one car and all of a sudden found himself trying to overtake another. And at that point, there isn't really much that the car in front can do. He has to turn it at some point. Well, Denzel Clarkson has a little less defending to do because Joe Sparrow spun out. Andrew Fellows has spun out as well. We can just about see that in the background. We saw the side of that entry, and Andrew Fellows is going to be dropping right towards the back of the field in the GT3 class. Not what he needed at all to start off his championship campaign. Denzel Clarkson still having to almost defend somewhat with a couple of other cars around him. In fact, I think just behind him is Jason Baxter, the race leader. He's nearly a full lap down is Denzel Clarkson. Oh, the 52, I think, was he trying to come down pit lane? I'm not too sure.
I think he was.
With the 52, there is contact with him, and Dean Sheesby, I think, is now in the box, but that was a little bit more argy-bargy than it probably needed to be.
It was, and I think Dean is thinking that he's coming into the pits. Denzel's thinking, right, I've got up the inside, I've got a run on him, gets his foot down, and as Dean comes across, unfortunately there is an NSX in his way. So yeah, really, really unfortunate and bad luck there. So I guess if Dean was a lap down, maybe he could have let Denzel through a bit earlier and then tucked in behind him maybe. As we can see, Denzel here, he's got 2 Porsches coming up behind him, so he's got his sister team, Gianni Terhar, sister teammate, coming through as well, and Gianni is in a battle with Clyde Veyer as well. So no, Clyde Veyer is off the back, so that must be a lapped car that we've got in the middle of these two guys. Yeah, well, these two are not going to cause too much hassle for each other because they're in a sister team. So is Gianni going to let Denzel through, or is Denzel's flashing his lights to say, hey, come on, I'm coming? I'm not quite sure what the deal is there.
No. Clearly a little bit of unhappiness between them, though, as they're running towards the final corner. Christian Chard coming into the pit lane now, as Denzel Clarkson will follow him in, the Guyanan driver, into the box for what should be the only time in this race. Ben Bennyworth continues onwards his Quartermass Motorsports Bravo car, 5 seconds off the back of Lewis Plath in Lewis's home race, being a German. One thing I love about the calendar, and I feel like I can touch on it now as we are waiting to see how these pit stop cycles shake out, is that we do go to a different country every single week, and it goes to show how deep or how many fantastic racing circuits around the continent we have in Europe for GT racing.
It certainly is. It certainly is. We've got lots of good circuits coming up. I think this is probably, upon reflection, this is probably the tightest one of the tracks. Maybe the Hungaroring. I suppose that's maybe still as tight, but a little bit longer.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's one of those circuits. I think also you could put in a bit of an argument for Imola with the features of not really any runoff, and you've got to be very careful on each of the corners. I think in direct comparison, when we get towards Spa and Silverstone towards the end of the season, that's going to be a little bit wider. I think fair to say a little bit easier on overtaking, right?
It is. I've just noticed in the chat there that a few people have said that the stream is struggling, so apologies for that. We are using Restream. We're streaming on 2 different platforms. It's not supposed to take up any resources, so apologies if the stream is struggling and stuttering. We'll try and get that worked on for next week. We're not experiencing anything this end, I can tell you, so it doesn't look to be a resource problem our end. I don't know for you, Dara, is everything coming through clear and without stutters?
Yeah.
Or as we've just seen,
Looks okay for me on the YouTube as well. I've had that up, so at least for the time being, it looks absolutely fine.
Okay, well we'll have to review that afterwards and see. I just noticed there that there was a little bit of an incident with Anton. As Anton was coming up out of the final turn, it looked like he had a little bit of an incident with a slower car that was also coming into the pit lane. So it looks like it might have caught quite a few people out this race. But Anton's now back up to P4. So the gap between Anton and Jason is about 36 seconds. So I don't exactly know how long a pit stop is. So it's going to be, we're going to have to keep our eye out when Jason actually comes into the pit. So with 19 minutes to go, I'm guessing that probably it's going to be in the next couple of laps, because with 70% fuel, 70 litres usually gets you about 45 minutes, maybe 45 to 50 minutes worth of running, although that could possibly be on a track that's got a lot longer straight, so maybe the fuel consumption is a bit better here. So we've got Matt Hoyland into the pits, so that's maybe a little bit of a signal that these guys are coming towards the end of their fuel run.
Yeah, and I can't imagine they're going to be able to go much further. Realistically, Matt Hoolan does come in now. They have been going nearly 45 minutes in this race, and with every passing lap, the less and less likelihood there is of drivers taking tyres, isn't there? Obviously, with the fact that at this stage you're not going to gain too much of that time back on fresher tyres compared to if you stayed on your older tyres. Baxter getting himself through back into a little bit more clean air with no GT4s for the next couple of seconds up the road. But you can see in the back of the shot there are a couple of GT4s that are on the horizon for him. Does he come into the pit lane this time around though?
No, he doesn't.
Keeps continuing out there. Goes one more time. A little bit of blinking there, but he is still out on the circuit. And is still lapping very well indeed. Last lap there was 1 minute 20 flat, and no one else at the moment is lapping with him. Closest is Anton Kalo, but he's going on 1 minute 20.1. So that pit stop blend could be very interesting between the two of those drivers.
Definitely. As we look down, Martin Kenyon's worked his way back up to P3 in the GT4s, but obviously we're going to have lost a little bit of info in terms of who's pitted and who's not pitted. So I guess that within the last kind of 10 minutes, when we get to the last 10 minutes of the race, that's going to reveal clearly to us who's been in, who's not been in. So I'm assuming that at the moment Martin hasn't been in. My timing screen is saying that Martin's not been in, so still a pit stop to make as he jumps in now on cue. So that's going to drop Martin back. Tristan Engelstad is the next driver behind him. We've not mentioned Tristan much, so good to see Tristan back out with ESR. So currently running P4. It looks like Tristan hasn't pitted either, and William hasn't pitted either. So I've got one of my left eye is just keeping an eye on Jason Baxter to see when he pits, and also James Warren. Jason Baxter's just done a 119.6, so he's really putting the hammer down, which is probably understandable as the fuel load lightens.
Yeah, I'd agree on that. The fuel load lightening can help with so many different aspects of the car, can't it, really? Because it just takes the weight off the car. I mean, it seems to it's pretty simple, but, it goes to how the tyres can act, what the pace can be like, how you're able to take certain corners, how much commitment you feel like you can have through some of the high speed parts of the circuit. It really can make a difference, which is why we're seeing drivers run it as far as they possibly can. I can't imagine anybody can get pretty much to the last lap or two without having to make a pit stop, but they are going further and further and further into the race and really showing, or setting the standard to what I think we can come to expect as we get through the rest of the season. William Humphrey, mind you, quick update on him. He has now lapped everybody in his class up to Stephen Donnelly in P9. Next car to lap will be Malcolm Coates, and let me tell you, he's only about 4 seconds up the road. And William Humphrey is lapping a little bit quicker than him for the time being, so he is going to be the next one looking for a move. William Humphrey as well, only just over 2 laps down overall, which is incredible when you think about how much pace advantage the GT3s have clearly had over the course of 45 minutes of this race so far. And William Humphrey he's putting down a statement, to say the very, very least.
He is, and here we go. We've got Jason Baxter in the pits. So he's going to be taking on minimal amount of fuel, doesn't go up on the jacks, so that's no tyres for Jason Baxter. So we've got James Warren, who takes the lead temporarily. So Jason's coming out now. If we jump on board with Anton, where is Anton? He's coming down the straight now. This is going to be close as he comes out the pits. Where is Jason going to rejoin? He's going to rejoin behind him. He's not. He's got out ahead. No, he's not. He's got out ahead. He's got out ahead.
And that could be really crucial, because Anton hasn't necessarily been lapping at the same speed as Jason Baxter, which can clearly be seen now over the last 10 laps or so. It has been 11 laps since Anton Kalo came into the pit lane. Quite a big differential then between the two drivers, and when you consider that Anton came in about 50 minutes ago, it's going to be a 15-minute fresher car in real terms for Jason Baxter, depending on tyres, if he's taken any, depending on how much fuel he's ended up putting into the car. It won't have been much, and probably why his pit stop was shortened off just that little bit more. Pit stop time for both of them, very, very similar indeed, about 12 seconds or so. So not much to split them in the stop, but Jason Baxter doesn't really mind because whatever the math says, he's currently in P2 in this race and will be P1 once James Warren pits, because he is the only driver inside the GT3 class who hasn't yet made it down pit road yet.
He is, so net P1. So yeah, the undercut didn't quite work for Anton. So because of how busy it's been, we don't know whether there was a reason why Anton pitted earlier. Maybe it was to get the fast repair, who knows. So it looks like all Jason has got to do for the last 13 minutes of this race is stay out of trouble, and he'll be bringing this home for the first win in the GT3 class. The same for William Humphrey. So William has now pitted. He's just coming out of the pits. Probably a free pit stop for William, which I'm sure he'll be delighted about. So he's also got the next 13 minutes just to navigate through the traffic, avoid any incidents, avoid being hit by any faster GT3 cars that come up behind him, and he will be looking to take his first win as well. We've got Pedro Luis da Silva, who's also gone into the pits. Ooh, looks like Pedro's missed his pit box there, so not taking tyres, fuel only. Looks like we've got quite a few people coming into the pits at the same time. So I guess what we're going to see now, Dara, as we get into the next 2 or 3 minutes, everything's going to run out at being, I think when James Warren pits, as you say, there's only a few other drivers into the GT4 class that haven't yet pitted, as Pedro is going to rejoin in what is probably going to be P10, maybe even a little bit more. He's got Craig Hewlett in P11 just coming down the pit lane now with Henry Garcia, so this is going to end up being quite a tight battle. If they're going to also have Pedro to deal with, he would just be coming out in front of them. Yeah, he's a little bit further down the road, so these two are going side by side through a very, very tricky section. Looks like Craig's got the better of it done for the moment. We've got Joe Glass up in P7, so Joe's had a tidy race as he just takes a little bit of a spin as he puts the power down, but I think he'll be quite pleased with that, starting in I think P11 or P12. So good race from Joe, Williams' teammate, so that will definitely be standing the Glass Tech team in good form. We've got Ben Bennyworth up in P6, solid night for Ben, kept himself out of trouble. Will Soper's managed to navigate himself through to 5th place, and he's running 6 seconds behind James Warren. James Warren has now pitted, so that will be the correct running order as we run up to the last 10 minutes, Dara.
Yeah, not long left now in the opening round of the season here for the ESR European GT Championship, and it looks like it's going particularly well for the Rage Against the Game esports team, for the K1, sorry, not for the K1 esports team, it's the MK SimSport team with Anton Kalo behind the wheel, and of course for Glass Tech and SRB, who are the top two in the respective classes for the time being. We are still waiting for a couple of those pit stops, namely Linus Petkovicius and Malcolm Coates, who are yet to make their way down pit lane, but Marius Hipmer has gone through. Stephen Donnelly has gone through as well, albeit very early in this race did Stephen Donnelly make his way into the pit lane, so the question remains, can he get to the end? The answer is he should do, but we don't quite know just yet. William Humphrey continues to lead. After that pit stop, it means he's now lapped everybody up to 16th. Niels Kuhler will be next, but he's approaching a bit of a flurry of cars. But the fact is, he doesn't really have to push too much further as Petkovicius comes into the pit lane, because William Humphrey has dominated this race from start to, well, now, which is 50 minutes in, and has been absolutely imperious, as we've almost expected him to be over the last year or so in GT4s and ESR, continuing that form once again. Malcolm Coates, he's going to come in this time around, and he will give himself about a 9-minute second stint, which isn't that bad at all, but, you know, a handful of laps or so to get him to the checkered flag. And as we get towards the closing stage of this race, battles are a little bit fewer and further between. However, Luke Bailey is coming under pressure from Gianni Terha as they fight for P8 and P9 in the GT3 class. Christian Charge joining in the back of that as well. We've also got Henry Garcia fighting with Craig Hewlett. But let's have a look at this 3-car battle with Terha for the Quad Dash Racing outfit and Christian Charge for the HSR Motorsport team, all fighting their way in towards the final couple of corners. These are some decent points up for grabs in the opening race to still keep yourself up in the fight for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see that Gianni's got a little bit of his front bumper missing. So he's getting a few flashing lights from Christian behind him now. I don't know whether that's kind of frustration or whether these have been having a little bit of a ding-dong that we've not caught on stream. So, yeah, going to be an interesting, tight little battle for these. They've got Luke Bailey in front. So Luke's going to be looking to do the best that he can do in replacement of Matthew Jones. So he's not going to be obliged to move out of the way. He's going to be trying to keep in that P8 as much as he can. So I don't know, that bumper missing, I imagine that will be causing Gianni a little bit of drag on the straights. Probably not too bad on the corners. And then just behind these, we've got Alok Iyengar and a recovered Joe Sparrow. I think Joe's had a couple of incidents. That's still running in P12. So I think, considering all the incidents that Joe's had, he'll be quite happy with that overall. Certainly finishing in the top half. What he'll be more happy about, I'm sure, is his teammate Stephen Donnelly, that's currently running in P3 in the GT4s. So stunning run for Stephen. You may recall earlier, Dara, we were talking about some of the dark horses in the field, and I think Stephen's shown himself, especially in that GT4 championship, to be a real contender. So he'll be quite pleased with this run in P3 for the first round of the season, and probably hoping to look to go one better next time out.
Exactly. And I think there's going to be a lot of drivers and teams almost already focusing on or thinking about the next round already. You know, races maybe haven't gone necessarily well, and they can almost try and channel their thoughts into where we're going to be in a couple of weeks' time, which of course will be the Hungaroring at the start of April. Very exciting race in prospect there as well. A little bit longer in terms of the lap and a little bit less in terms of the ability to lap some of the cars. It's not as wide parts of the Hungaroring, generally a very narrow circuit, particularly the middle and the final sector, so that could be a little bit more tricky by the time we get there. But still, drivers focusing on this race, and Henry Garcia is one of those. Chris Jennings is the driver he's battling with, as they both look to finish inside the top 10 in the opening round of the season. Don't count out fellow reserve driver to Garcia, Adam Atherton and John Lubbock in this battle. Craig Hewlett's involved as well. Pretty much a 5-car scrap towards the end of this race. We're getting a bit of a scrap as well in the GT3s. This race is coming back to us a little bit, James.
It is. It looks like we've got P9 to P11 in the GT3s, and we've got P8 all the way down to P13 here in the GT4s. Tristan Engelstadt looks like he's just dropped back a few places. So we're on board with Henry Garcia, who's got Adam Afton 8/10 behind him. Henry can see the two cars in front. Oh, Henry's just had a little bit of a tap. That is very, very unfortunate. Looks like the number 5 driver of Andy Chell there. So, yeah. As we often say, Dara, commentators coincidence. We're not doing that again. We're not. I'm sure Henry won't be happy with us at all. For as he gets, I think it's that William Humphrey that's working his way through. It is, yeah. So luckily William manages to stay out of it. Well, that's changed that little gap a little bit. So we've got Chris Jennings just got a little bit of a blink in there. So apologies for that. We'll, if that's coming through on the stream, we'll just try and work on that for next time out. So Chris Jennings now up to P9, so he's running 2/10 behind Craig Hewlett. So I think these two have been battling for quite a few laps now.
Have, and it's likely going to go to the end of the race, this battle. Just about 5 minutes under that remaining for these battles to be sorted out. Petkavicius and then Chris Jennings, then Craig Hewlett come across the line, and with a couple of other GT3s mixing in there as well, including Joe Glass in that number 10 car coming through, as he's up inside the top 7, just trailing Ben Bennyworth in that quarter mass entry. But almost two of the closest battles inside the top 10 of each class, tripping over each other at the moment. What's happened to Jason Baxter, though? apparently he's out of the race. Is that a connection issue, or is he really out? We'll have to find out on that one. But Jason Baxter looks like he's disappeared from the circuit entirely. James, do you know why that is?
No idea. He's dropping down.
Must be a disconnection then.
He's dropping down the timing order, so it could be a disconnection. We did see on a league race a week or so ago that somebody did keep disconnecting and then reconnecting. They weren't aware of it, so we'll just hold tight just in case Jason Baxter does pop up again a little bit later, but that will actually promote Matt Hoyland into P2. So Matt will have come all the way up from, I think, was it a P6 or a P7 qualifying position. So that will put Matt into P2. Very, very unfortunate for Jason if that is a disconnection. We'll have to catch up with him after and see what that may be, but it is what it is, and the race goes on. Unfortunately, that promotes James Warren into the podium positions in P3 and Will Soper up in P4 with only 3 minutes left to go. And down in the GT4s, we've got some really close battling going on here between from P8 all the way down to P12.
Yeah, really exciting to see these guys, even P7 involved in this with Adam Atherton, with Petkovicius right on the back of him, but then the gaps do get slightly closer. All of the cars winding their way to the back end of the circuit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flying through the frame. Pretty much joined together, not much to separate them at all. John Ludbrook at the back of the group trying to find any kind of way past that he can. Tristan Engelstad, looking for an outside line. You're going to be hard pressed to make a move on Chris Jennings through there, but the British driver still holding firm inside that top 10, and in fact now may go after Craig Hewlett as defence turns into attack in the blink of an eye. Same could be said for Engelstad as he was attacking Jennings, but now has to look behind him for John Ludbrook to try and come through. A flashing of the lights as well, as there's also another one of the GT4s, I believe, coming through. Oh no, though, Chris Jennings, contact at turn 12. That's going to spin him around. Careful! That's not the way to rejoin.
Well, that's certainly got you going there, Dara. That's very, very unfortunate for Chris Jennings. Really unfortunate with only a lap to go, and now he's just got to sit there and wait. So that's promoted the other guys up in front of him. So we've got John Ludbrook, we've got Craig Hewlett that's now running in P9. Tristan Engelstad's worked his way through, so he'll be quite P8 for Tristan. And his teammate Janitor Hart is running P7 in the GT3s, so not a bad performance for the Quad Dash Racing team. As we're now into the last minute of the race, so I don't know how many laps we're going to get with Anton. You're normally pretty good at working this out, Dara, so we don't know if we're on the final lap at the moment. I suspect that Anton may be able to finish this lap, and there might be one more lap after this.
Yeah, we're going to get this one and then one more here because he's going to cross the line before we reach the full hour completion. Slowest part of the lap is the first half, and he's already halfway through the lap with still about 45 seconds left on the clock. So Anton will get one more lap in. Where is William Humphrey in relation? William Humphrey is actually just ahead of Anton Kalo. I suspect Anton will lap him once more before we see the checkered flag fly. And so we're going to see both race winners come across the line pretty much together, I do believe. Anton may have a little bit more work to do to lap and overtake William Humphrey, but it's certainly going to be close. But as he comes around the penultimate corner, as we see Christian Chard come into the pit lane along with a couple of others, they may have to splash the dash. There is one more to go, and white flag flies here at the Sachsenring.
I don't think it is a splash and dash. I think this is people that have got all the way up to the limit, and they're probably needing to take a drive through. So I know that the off tracks can be pretty savage here, as it maybe is splash and dash. They're both coming out of the pits, the two drivers that were in. So yeah, track limits is going to play a big part in this if drivers have got a drive through. I think that was Joe Sparrow, and I don't remember the other driver. Was it Chris Jennings? Maybe could have been the GT4 driver. Chris could have been for damage, of course. But yeah, Anton Kilo coming through. Great race for Anton. Jason in the chat has just told us that his PC crashed, his game crashed, so really unfortunate for Jason there, because he'd had an absolute cracking race. So hopefully we'll see Jason back next week, 2 weeks time, sorry, next round, and he'll be able to put right those wrongs at the next round.
As we see the final couple of corners be attempted here from Anton Kalo, he's the one driver who's now going to lap for one final time is William Humphrey, who is going to be winning in the GT4 class. Both of our class winners are going to come across the line pretty much together in the opening round of the season. It's been a really engaging hour's worth of racing and sets us up brilliantly well. But in the GT3 class here at the Sachsenring, to take the checkered flag versus Anton Kalo, the Finnish driver, winning the race in the end from pole position, but that doesn't quite tell the whole story. It does tell the whole story to win from pole for William Humphrey. He controlled the race from start to finish, and is going to win out by some 37 seconds, if not just that little bit more. Matt Hoyland and James Warren will finish on the podium in the GT3 class. Marius Hipper and Stephen Donnelly looking like they're on for podiums in the GT4 class. But a really enthralling opening hour to the championship season, and sets us up very, very well for the Hungaroring in just a couple of weeks' time.
It certainly does. James Warren coming through, taking P3 in the GT3 class. As we now jump to Marius Hibner, Marius is coming through, taking P2, and Stephen Donnelly with a very well-earned P3 in the GT4 class. So they are your top three podium finishers, and we'll try and catch up with the other drivers as they come through. So yeah, I imagine Stephen will be delighted with P3 in round one. Flashing the lights there as we get to Gianni Terhaar. Gianni Terhaar is going to come through in P7, and it looks like Bruno Silva is going to follow Gianni through. He is, to take P8, so Bruno will be delighted with that. We've got Eila Kayenga in P9, and Clive Veyer is taking the P10 as Clive comes across the line. Now, as it looks like we've got most of the GT4s already over the line, Dara. So, wow, what an evening's racing. It's certainly given us something to think about in terms of how we keep up with that moving forward. So, I best be time to look through some results.
Yeah, and when we look through some results, we'll be able to speak to a couple of the drivers who were here this evening. 2 or 3, three or four hopefully, will jump in and have a word with us. But overall, in the end, it was Anton Kalo in the GT3 class. Just saw the overall race results there. This is the GT3 class. Who won the race in the number 12 car? It says K1 Esports, but really it should be MK Sinsport for who he won. Matt Hoyland and James Warren, second and third. Will Soper, Ben Pennyworth, and Joe Glass, the only other drivers within a minute of the overall race winner. Gianni Terhaar and Bruno Silva finished 7th and 8th for Quad Dash and for Luma Motorsport Glow, respectively. Alok Iyengar, Clyde Veyer, and it was Luke Bailey who rounded out the top 11, all on the lead lap. Christian Chard, the first driver, a full lap down. The same can be said for Joe Sparrow, Adam Baker, and Lewis Platt in his home race, who finished inside the top 15, along with Andrew Fellows. For Andy Chell, for Robin Aston, for Andre Muntian, they all finished 2 laps down. And we look further back to the likes of Jaden Scotland, and sadly for Jason Baxter, the driver whose PC crashed and took him out of what would have been such a fantastic finishing position. We hope that he can pick up some of the form he showed tonight next time out at the Hungaroring. Zelinskas, Dean Sargent, Denzel Clarkson, Dean Cheesby, and Dave Van Dam, the top 26 drivers, a few of those at the back, didn't finish the race. And that is all that we have in the GT3 class. Would you like me to keep going, James, or do you want to take the GT4s?
I'd like you to keep going. I'm just having a bit of a question mark
fine.
on some technical challenges. So yeah, if you don't mind, I'll let you take the GT4s away.
It's all right. Just don't want to feel like I'm hogging the mic. That's all. William Humphrey, though, your race winner in the GT4s by quite some distance. Let's be real. Really, really impressive result from him. Stephen Donnelly finished in P3, just behind Marius Hibner, the Danish driver, carrying over some good momentum from the GT4 Championship on a Monday night here to the Sundays that have got underway for the European GT Championship. Pedro Luis da Silva and Martin Kenyon 4th and 5th, but they're over a minute behind William Humphrey in the end. Adam Atherton, Tristan Engelstadt, and Craig Hewlett were the only other drivers on the lead lap, and Craig Hewlett was in the pit lane when William Humphrey crossed the line. So realistically, emotionally, only the top 7, well, the rest of the top 7 weren't lapped by the overall race winner. Niels Kula, Henry Garcia, and Malcolm Coates, 9th, 10th, and 11th were a lap down. Same can be said for Linus Petkovicius and Bobby Moss. Sergio Ferreira and John LeBrook Simon Hunt and Callum Morrow, Chris Jennings as well, the top 18. Those guys are a lap down, with the top 20 rounded out by Ian Chambers and Pete Paiova, who were 2 laps down. Sadly, for the likes of Nick Stubb, Mike Fowler, Rob Gregg, these guys sadly couldn't find the checkered flag in a competitive fashion. Sean Moriarty, Scott Kostrick, Yellow Damstra, and Jason Haddington. The rest of the order, those guys, some of them right at the back, didn't have as many laps as I think they otherwise would have hoped to have done. In the end, though, I think it's fair to say a pretty successful evening's worth of racing, James, to kick off the season.
It was. It absolutely was, Dara. I'm just trying to get to grips with all of the technical different bits and pieces, but yeah, thoroughly enjoyable. And hopefully we get everything sort of ironed out. I guess this was all intended to be ironed out for the last round, or the pre-season round, shall we say. So yeah, apologies for that. Sorry that the stream seemed to lose its quality at some point during, so we'll look into that and we'll see how we can improve that for next week. I've got a few ideas. I think I might know what's been causing it. So yeah, hopefully for 2 weeks' time we will have that solved. So in the meantime, Dara, I guess that we're going to be looking for some interviews, and if you want to do the honours, we can see who it is that you would like to interview.
Well, I mean, looking who we've got in the booth, I think we've got a couple of our second place drivers. Now, I don't know how much you're still working on the broadcast, James.
Yeah,
but
we're
would you like me to
almost
take the
there.
interview, or should we?
We're almost there, yeah, so fire away.
Okay, perfect. Right, we will get going with the P2 driver in the GT3 class. That is Matt Hoyland, who finished just in behind Anton Kalo. And Matt jumps in with us and joins us now. Matt, firstly, can you hear us?
I can hear. I got you.
Perfect. Good stuff. Well, welcome in, Matt. Fantastic result for you in the opening round of the season. We're seeing it in slow-mo now, but the race really started for you at turn 1. The incident that happened was right in front of you. Talk us through how you picked your way through it all.
Just guessed, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't think there were any real skill involved. I'd already committed to the outside line, and I think really my only chance of survival was to really go wide, and thankfully that NSX wasn't quite travelling fast enough to tag me, but I think I dodged a bullet a little bit on that one. But that just seemed to be the theme of the race, really. Just exist and wait for everyone else to have mistakes.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say you weren't exactly, pressing Anton towards the end of the race, but good consistent pace shown throughout. How did this track feel? I mean, opening race of the season, that Corvette, not necessarily an incredibly popular choice, but you've made it work for you. What is it about the Corvette that is what's drawn you to it for this season?
Just a challenge, I guess. I mean, I spent the last GT3 season in the Mustang, and I'd really good pace in the drive, but it was really bad in the wet. It cost me too many points on the wet races, so I wanted something that was a bit more balanced. I'm not quite as comfortable in this as I used to be in the Mustang, but it should be much more drivable in the wet. So I was playing sort of hedging my bets a little bit, but it felt good during the race. Practice, I was running a completely different setup, and I was having a nightmare, to be perfectly honest. I could not keep it on the road, and then I thought, well, I might as well try something else. Last 5 minutes of practice, and thankfully it was a lot better, and it really became a lot more drivable. So yeah, the car was good in the end. It just, I think I was missing out on a little bit of practice because I'd been using the wrong set initially.
Hey, I mean, still some good points for the Dexterous Motorsports team going into the second round in the Hungaroring in a couple of weeks' time. Before I ask you if you've got anybody you'd like to shout out on the stream, James, I don't know if you've got any questions for Matt. I don't want to shut you out.
Hello, Matt. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I'm top of the world now. It's finished. So yeah, not too bad. Just one question from me, really. What was it like navigating the traffic? Because it was pretty tricky for me and Dara to kind of keep up with all the incidents that were going on. So can you tell us from a driver's perspective what it was like to work your way through the GT4s?
Yeah, I think this track in particular, and I think Hungary might be more of the same. It was really awkward because the GT3s are a fair bit quicker on a lap, but they don't have that punch out of the corners. So like, I know a lot of people would have done Sebring and stuff yesterday, and like you see the GTPs against things, and they can wait until the corner exit, and by the time you reach the next corner, they've gone. Like, there's no trouble. But with the GT3s versus GT4s, you're almost having to set it up like 2 corners in advance, because you know you can't just get your foot down and you've gone. So yeah, really difficult. everyone was running slightly different lines because the corners here, they're not particularly one-line corners, a lot of them. So you don't really know whether they're letting you go or whether they're expecting you to go left or right. But yeah, you just had to be as careful as you could and just hope that you were both on the same page, really.
Yeah, I think we saw a bit of that with your teammate Martin. I think he was taking one line and then he got a GT3 up the inside. And I think, you know, in the GT3's defence, he didn't really think that Martin was going to close the gap. And I don't think Martin could even see him there. So yeah, lessons learned for us in that regard. I think this is definitely one of the tighter tracks that hopefully it'll be a little bit easier at the rest. I think we did point out that the Hungaroring may be similar. So great night for you there, mate. Great P2. Anybody that you want to give a shout out to before we let you go?
Yeah, obviously I'll shout out to Martin. I know he had his fair share of incidents, as he was making very clear on the voice chat. But yeah, really good result for the team. Obviously P2 and P5, we can't ask for much more than that considering where we started. Also a huge shout out to Danny because he's been checking the timing the whole way through and giving us updates and stuff. So he's been working hard for that. And obviously shout out to you guys as well for the stream. I'm looking forward to watching this one back.
Well, we did have a few issues halfway through, so I think there's a bit of a connectivity issue to be trying to resolve for a couple of weeks' time. But brilliant. Thanks for joining us for the chat, mate, and all the best for 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, no worries, guys. Thank you.
Who was Matt Hoyland, our P2 man in the GT3 class. I've just seen the race winner has actually jumped in to the booth. We're going to bring in Anton Kalo for a quick chat as well. Anton, welcome in. Great to be able to have a chat with you. Dominant win in the end, of course, helped out a little bit with the connection issues for Jason. But talk us through how you're feeling after that one, because you've really put your marker down for the championship.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of course happy to win. I mean, I gave everything. Pole was by 2/1000th, so can't really say I smashed the qualifying. I gave it everything, and Jason gave it everything. I'm hopeful that he gave it everything. If he has another 10th in him, Hungary will be tough. Of course, the race was, I mean, I had nothing for him. First quarter of the race, I was doing okay, and then my tires were gone. I'm not very good at the GT4 traffic management, so yeah, I had nothing for him there, honestly. At the end, I got so lucky with his computer. This was Jason's race, 100%. I'm just happy that I got the points, to be honest.
Yeah, but that's the important thing, isn't it? The points are on the board for you and for the team as well. I mean, you kind of touched on it, but where does the confidence lie going into the Hungaroring in a couple of weeks' time? You know, you've clearly shown some good pace. P2, regardless of whether Jason has a little bit more in the back pocket, is still a good result. But the Hungaroring, is that a track you're looking forward to racing at? And do you feel like you can kind of carry on this momentum and this good form?
I hope so. I'll have to buy it, get that downloaded, do some practice there. I mean, it was the same with Sachsenring. I think a lot of people were in the same boat with this track. There's not a lot of data for this. There's no setups that I know a lot of iRacing drivers normally rely on. I mean, had to go from scratch. I feel like everybody probably did the same thing. Like Porsche Cup was here, and then that's been it as far as the officials go. So, bit of a tricky one with that. It will be similar for me in Hungaroring. I know a lot of guys will have that track in their back pocket already, so it will be a challenge for me, for sure.
But I'm sure you're going to be doing an absolutely stellar job once again. James, I don't know if you have anything to ask Anton, but a great result for him.
No, just compliments on the win and congratulations, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks' time. Is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to, Anton, before we let you go?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, thank you very much for the congratulations. I will definitely be taking the win. I have some family and friends watching, so hello everybody on the stream. Yeah, very, very happy to have won this one. Thank you very much.
Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. Well, we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time, and thanks for joining us for the chat.
Thank you.
Anton Kalo there. Kind of want to be a part of the Anton Kalo fan club in the chat now. That sounds like a great time. I've seen a few Finnish flags in there over the course of the evening. I think I can kind of get a bit of a spot on as to who that could be for Anton there. Looking at who we have got left, I want to grab a very quick word with Jason Baxter at the end. But before that, I think we can drag in Marius Hibmer, finished P2 in the GT4 class. We haven't quite got the race winner William Humphrey with us, but Marius will be able to join us. Now, welcome in, Marius, once again. Great result for you to kick off the season. You know, William, again, a class above the rest, but you really showed some great pace in that GT4 class.
Yeah, I really wasn't expecting it, to be fair. Going in, like in the practice session, I was seeing so many people go so much faster, and then I think just turn one, so many people went off, and I just got a bunch of positions and just kept it clean the entire race, and that's really how I finished so high.
Again, great result for you in terms of the championship. Hungaroring's in a couple of weeks' time. Is it a track you're looking forward to racing at? Because the characteristics are somewhat similar to here at the Sachsenring compared to what we're going to go to towards the end of the season at the tracks like Spa and Silverstone.
Yeah, I do look forward to the Hungaroring. I mean, I think traffic is going to be horrible with the GT3s through like the middle sector, but the rest of the track is fine, and it's a track I enjoy driving. I haven't driven it in a GT4 before. I've driven it plenty on the F1 games though, and I've always really liked the circuit.
We look forward to seeing you there, absolutely. James, I'll bring you in here. Marius, of course, it's been a big part of Monday evenings of late, but now on a Sunday looks great. Have you got anything to ask?
I do. Yeah, good evening, Marius, and congratulations. Great result. I want to know a little bit about the livery. Who's the responsible of the Flatline liveries? Because that is one pretty stunning livery that you've got on there.
That'll be Andrew Fellows. He's the one who does liveries for us at Flatline, and he does a great job every single time. Always some banging liveries he does.
Brilliant, mate. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, great performance. Is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to, Marius, before we let you go?
I'll just give a shout out to my team, Flatline Racing. They've been great, and I absolutely love racing with them. And I'll also give a shout out to grazinggood.com, which is officially my sponsor.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, that is the time to do it. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time, and all the best.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you to Marius there for joining us. Great result for him in the opening round of the season. James, I don't know about you. I think we can probably squeeze in one more driver.
We certainly can.
Chat. How about Jason Baxter? I think he'd be a great person to speak to, even though he had some technical issues towards the end of the race. The pace was absolutely there for Jason, and he does join us now. Welcome in, Jason. Commiserations, of course, with the technology failure, nothing that you could do. You know, thinking about the first 3 quarters of the race, the pace absolutely there for you. Really showed some absolutely fantastic speed. Just the confidence like after that kind of not necessarily result, but the speed and pace that you showed in the first half of the race. Where does the confidence lie going into the Hungaroring in a couple of weeks' time?
I think it's going to be a different beast, isn't it? Because with this track, nobody's done it in officials. Nobody had setups, and it benefited people who practiced the most and learnt the most. There's no track guides. Hungaroring's a bit of a different track. People are going to have a lot of practice there, a lot of racing experience. So it's starting afresh, really.
Yeah, and it's going to be a really exciting way to get us really into the meat of the season. Of course, first round of the season, the results for the standings for race number 2 are always the results for race number 1, so you're going to be a little bit further down. But does that almost give you a little bit more, or less of a target on your back into the next couple of weeks, or do you still feel that with the performance that you've shown tonight, that people are still going to be looking at you and racing you maybe ever slightly differently to some of the others?
I don't know. I think it's going to be a mixed bag, isn't it? I've got nothing to lose as such now because I'm not going to be going into the race with a points lead. If anything, I think I finished about 4th from the bottom, so absolutely nothing to lose. But hopefully the guys recognise I had some pace there, and hopefully I can take that into the next one.
Yeah, we wish you all the best, James. I'll bring you in here because I think for Jason, lots of positives to take, but interesting to see. What do you think about it, James?
Yeah, really good, strong performance. Commiserations on the technical glitch there, Jason. I don't know kind of what happened there. Did it just disconnect on you, or game crash, or what happened?
Full PC crash. First one I've had in iRacing as well. So our racing VR screen went black, wheel went full left lock, and I had to reboot the computer. So by that point, obviously the race had finished when I got back up and running.
Oh, so disappointed for you, mate. Well, we've also had a few technical glitches tonight, but with consequences not quite as drastic as yours, unfortunately. So yeah, commiserations on that, and hopefully everything's in a couple of weeks' time. Everything works out a lot better for you. Before we let you go, mate, is there anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I've seen half the chat messages in YouTube from my mates back home, so that's cool. Shouts to them, and obviously the Rage team. We had 3 other people in the event who absolutely smashed it as well. So, good to them.
Brilliant, mate. Brilliant. Well, best of luck for 2 weeks' time, and hopefully you bring the same pace and a bit more hardware reliability, which I'm hoping for myself. So yeah, we'll catch up with you then.
Yes, guys. Thanks very much.
There we go then. Commiserations in the end to Jason Baxter, but a really, really decent display in terms of the pace that he showed over the course of the night. But I think that's pretty much everybody that we want to talk to you, James. Successful opening race, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, not too bad, Dara, not too bad. I mean, certainly more successful than we were going to achieve on our little kind of run last week on the pre-season. So, yeah, apologies to everybody in the chat for the drop in the stream quality. I think I've got a fair idea of what it is that's caused that. So we will look to get that rectified for 2 weeks' time. So in 2 weeks' time, we are at the Hungaroring. So Sunday, the 6th of April, myself and Dara will be back in the booth with a stronger connection, hopefully, with less issues. So just to close out, if anybody is interested in getting racing with Evolution Sim Racing, then either scan the QR code or click the link in the description below, and you can jump into the Discord. So we've got a GT3 Championship running on Thursday evenings, which at the moment is full. We're about to kick that off with the pre-season round this week. We've got 2 splits. We've got an A split and a B split. Dara and Joe Glass will be commentating on the A split, and we've got Paul TX 141 Walsh who will be commentating for us on the B split. So we're super excited about that new season that's kicking off. We've got the European GT Championship, which runs on Sunday evening. And then some of you may be aware, we've also just kicked off a brand new championship, which is currently in registration phase at the moment, which is the Danny Lee Porsche Cup. So Danny approached us at ESR with a view to helping him set up his own championship. So Danny is the championship organiser, and we are just hosting it inside the ESR Discord. So we're absolutely delighted and privileged that Danny's chosen our league to run his first league championship. There are still spaces available, so if you want to pop into the Discord, have a little look at what's available. There are seats available in the Danny Lee Porsche Cup. And then finally, we also have a free practice league. So we're going to be running on Tuesday evenings, which is going to be a practice for the upcoming GT3 race that week. And then we're also going to be doing Saturday afternoons about 4 p.m, which will be a Saturday afternoon practice that anybody is welcome to join. And that's either going to be the practice for the multiclass GT championship, which we've seen tonight, or it's going to be the practice for the Porsche Cup. So if you fancy getting in a bit of multiclass action or testing yourself in the Porsche Cup car, then feel free to come and join us, jump into the Discord, really friendly community. You can register for the practice league totally free of charge, 2 races per week, and yeah, get on track, meet all the guys, and then be ready for when the next championships are up for registration. So I think that's kind of about it from me, Dara. It's been a great evening. It's not been stress-free, as probably people can imagine, but a massive thank you to you for kind of taking the lead and doing all the heavy lifting, and hopefully we'll be as the weeks go on, the dust will blow off a little bit and we'll get better and better. So I'll give you a chance for a final word before we sign off.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the Hungaroring in a couple of weeks' time. It's been a really interesting way to kick off the season. There were a lot of question marks coming in terms of, who could emerge towards the front, which of the newer drivers into the league could we see emerge as contenders, and I think a couple of those questions have been answered, but we kind of need those answers to be solidified in a couple of weeks' time, and I think Hungaroring is going to be a fantastic place to do that.
It certainly is. I'm looking forward to seeing where the championship standings fall, because with 2 different classes, really, really difficult to see where those team championship standings are going to play out. So we'll have all of that along with all of the action for you in 2 weeks' time from the Hungaroring. So that's all from us. So wish you a nice evening and have a great week, everybody, and we will see you back in 2 weeks' time.
For the upcoming right-hander, brake 30 meters later and ease off the pressure.
Are you spending a lot of time looking for setups and struggling for faster lap times? Are you tired of searching online for answers? Would you like to get setups, analysis and tutorials from some of the best sim racers in the world like Ralph Alla, Mitchell de Jong, Martin Krunker, Josh Rogers and many more? If so, virtualracingschool.com is the answer you've been looking for. VRS data packs provide hot laps from our professional coaches for you to analyse and replicate. They provide tutorials that walk you through the fastest laps and what the pros did to achieve the best times. And they provide the setups you need to ensure your car is competitive in both oval and road racing. If you're ready to get faster and reach more podiums sooner than later, just go to virtualracingschool.com and sign up for a free account today.